Welcome everybody. Today is Tuesday, January 6, 2015. Happy New Year everybody out there. This is the Board of County Commissioner of Pickens County, Colorado work session, and we're kind of in a light afternoon agenda. We've got some citizen board interviews starting with Dallas Blaney, and I'm assuming that's you.
Yes.
Come on up to the table.
Okay.
I'll give you a little rundown on how this not so formal interview process goes.
Okay.
We generally just kind of go around, ask questions of you to kind of get to know you a little bit. And if you have any questions for us about the position or anything like that, this is an appropriate time for that as well. And I will start by asking you first thanking you for volunteering for an interview for a volunteer position. We really appreciate our citizen volunteers for these boards. The Financial Advisory Board generally does financial forecasting for us, primarily for our budget process, but used in various other things as well. And I'll ask by saying, what do you think you bring to the board if you're appointed?
I think I will bring to the board a very deep investment in the Aspen idea and trying to think about how the budget is a manifestation of that idea. And I would also bring to the board as well some of my academic experience. I had several graduate classes on public administration, budgeting, etc. So I do have some limited experience in the budgeting process.
Thank you.
George? Follow up on that.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks again for applying. So you've got a very impressive resume. It looks like everything from a river guy to professor to a PhD in political science. So just to follow up with Rob's question, it doesn't seem like it's a perfect fit, so I wonder if you could expand a little bit more, given your background, and what are you doing currently?
I've just moved here. So I moved here 3 weeks ago. My wife found a job here. And so I moved out here to join her. So I'm looking for an opportunity to get involved in local politics and provide public service. And this seemed like a great opportunity to do that and learn more about, what's actually going on in the community and to provide what input I could into that process.
So where did you come from, and had you been involved with any boards in the past?
I haven't been involved in any public boards at the city or county level. I have been involved in, when you're teaching, you're always involved in committees in the university system, and I've been involved in many of those. But most recently, to answer your first question, I'm coming from the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay, so I was living in Green Bay, Wisconsin for the last 4 years. And prior to that, I lived in Colorado for about 22 years. Most of that on the Front Range, going to school in Boulder and Fort Collins.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Additional questions, Rachel?
Well, again, thank you for applying as well and jumping in so quickly. I'm just thinking you might not find the Financial Advisory Board as quite fulfilling as you think. At least right now, we've talked over the years about trying to find a greater role for them in helping us review projects or financials, and that may be evolving with some of the projects we have coming up. I don't know. But, primarily it's been about helping determine what we see as a reasonable rate of inflation and growth, and for managing our portfolio of assets and then planning the 5-year budget going out. Mm-hmm. But it's not a lot hands-on with the budget or the budget's decisions per se. Those are all in public work sessions. I was just going to ask, how permanent do you feel you are in the Valley now, and what other ways are you getting involved?
That's a tricky question in this valley. I want to sink roots here. I want to stay here. I love it here. So I would like to think I'm going to be here for the long term. And to answer your second question, what am I doing right now? Otherwise, I'm working as much as I can. It's a crazy season, so I don't have a real career track going right now in Aspen. I'm just sort of finding my way. So I'm working as a limousine driver temporarily until I figure things out.
That's a great way to get to know the town.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm up to.
Thank you.
Dallas, thank you for applying. You're way overqualified for any job in the county. So, you're an exchange student in Cairo.
Yes.
Did you see the upheaval coming when you were there?
No, it was incredibly calm. So I think the trigger, in my view, the trigger for that was the global food crisis. And so when that happened, it unleashed all that pent-up anger because the governments weren't able to continue subsidizing the food in Egypt to the extent that they had been. But to answer your question, when I was there, no, I didn't sense that coming at all. Things were very calm. It's very peaceful. It's a very, very safe place. I never once felt threatened in any way, shape, or form when I was there. So I was pretty surprised by the turn of events there.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of pent-up frustration by the Egyptians I was going to school with. Some of them frustrated by the slow process of democratization and the government's ability to sort of hold media hostage in Cairo and control the messaging and all of that. But I didn't see this coming at all.
Amazing.
Yeah.
As I said, thank you. You're just way overqualified.
Steve?
Looking over your resume, it looks like you could maybe serve the county better in some other capacity, perhaps on the Healthier Streams and Rivers Board, which there aren't vacancies for somebody who lives in Aspen right now, unfortunately. Also, just environmentally, the Core Board, which we don't appoint somebody to that, but I thought that might be something. And George, you serve on that. Is there any means on that board for a citizen to join?
Not the way it's current, not
It's
the way,
representatives from different government.
not the way the bylaws are set up at this point.
Okay. And I was wondering how much you were involved in the budgeting process and the financial aspects of the different things you did at the university.
So in the last 2 years, I've been pretty involved with that because we've been going through some pretty significant cutbacks. And so I served on our faculty senate, which is very much involved in that process. And I served on a couple other committees as well. The Legislative Affairs Committee, I was the chair of that. And so we look at, so much of our money comes from the state, and the state's been cutting back dramatically in the last few years. So we've been looking at the budget aspects of that legislative activity very, very closely. So I've been getting more and more involved in it within a university, never in a, that's my weakness for sure, never in a city or county capacity. So.
Okay.
Any questions for us, Dallas?
No, I guess, sort of the sense I'm getting is this might not be the best fit for me, and that's okay. I'm just looking for an opportunity to participate and get involved, and I'm very serious when I say I really want to sink roots here, and for me that means, getting involved in public service. And so if you all sense that there's an opportunity for me to get involved in some other capacity that might be a better fit with my background, then I'm more than happy to take your advice and pursue that. So.
Well, Dallas, I commend you for stepping forward as all of our candidates that step forward. I mean, as Rachel said, I'm not sure that it's not a good fit, but I think it's having an understanding of what the Financial Advisory Board does. I think we've had some illustrious ideas of having them really advise us in a financial capacity, but really the primary thing that they do is set the inflationary rates, look at where sales tax dollars are going to go, look before our budgeting process so that we can then analyze those numbers as a board, kind of approve them for use in the budget process, but less of a active role in the budget process, which is a public process and has public hearings throughout that process as well. So it's certainly an interesting process to get involved with. But
You know, I just say, I really appreciate as well your coming in, and we should keep your name on file and think about other opportunities. But there are so many nonprofit organizations that in this community who would probably love your help and assistance to volunteer with, anything from the Aspen Valley Ski Club and their events and ongoing. I just don't think the name of the board kind of implies more, and I'd love to see it doing more in the future. But part of that value, that membership is actually kind of the roots that people do already have in the community, can bring back the, this is what's going on with the hotel scene, or this is what's going on in construction, or the bankers and lending, and so it gives us a better feel outside of this room of what's going on in the town, and you might be just a little too new to really have that expertise right now.
Okay.
Yeah?
Hi, I'm Lisa with the Healthy Rivers Board. I believe Dallas is eligible. I think we're just looking for somebody in the Roaring Fork Valley watershed. So if he's interested, we have 2 applicants today, and we do have an opening. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly I would take a look online for the job description for the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board, which is a board throughout the watershed here, the Roaring Fork watershed, and it's a funded board that grants money and looks at conserving water and higher quality of water within our streams, and so that would be an interesting board to look at. But you found this one, so certainly continue to look on our website for various boards that become available.
Okay.
Michael, did you want to?
No, I just, I don't want Dallas to not be on the financial.
Yeah.
It's,
We're not making a decision right now. You've heard some of the concerns.
I'd like you to go ahead. And,
Yeah.
but there's plenty of challenges within the county that probably, would challenge you more than the financial board. But thank you. It's not often that we get somebody with this kind of resume. I think that's why we're sort of...
Yeah. Especially with some great values that we hold dear to Picken County seem to be reflected in your resume. So getting you involved is certainly to our advantage. So we want to find a place for you.
Find a place.
That's great.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, if this doesn't work out or you feel like this isn't a good fit, I'm certainly welcome to explore other opportunities. I'm just finding my way still, but I definitely want to get involved.
Well, thank you, Dallas, and welcome to the community.
I appreciate your time.
Next, Healthy Rivers and Stream Board, we have Alyssa Taylor. And I think you stepped in right after I gave my explanation of our interview process. We just kind of bounce around with questions.
Sure, so you want me to stay here?
Yeah, please. Come on up. And I'll start again with a similar question that I asked for the person, for Dallas on the Financial Advisory Board. What do you think you would bring to the Healthy Rivers and Stream Boards, and what are some of the priorities you think that they should be focusing on?
Well, I would be responsive to what the board felt like were the priorities. I'm sure, they've been working for years and have their list of priorities, so I'd want to kind of go with the flow and what they felt the priorities were. I guess if that question were asked just like ideologically, of course, I really value our riparian areas. In Colorado, it's less than 10% of our space is riparian, and over 90% of the wildlife depends on it. So in my mind, that's really where we should be focusing. Really, a lot of our ecological imperative is on the riparian zones. Just as far as health and I have a little pet project that I would love to see where it might be able to be fleshed out, where I've developed this plan to revegetate select areas of riparian habitat with native wildlife forage. So it's all native stock that's grown out, and then it's just planted to sort of re-veg in stream banks. So essentially you're re-vegging the stream banks with food that would never be subject to drought. So there's always going to be wildlife food coming off the stream banks for bears, for instance, to reduce bear-human conflicts in town. So my thought was, well, if I can re-veg a little bit, have a couple of little test zones. I went ahead and went through a grant application process with the Ski Co. Environmental, their grant program that they have. So that would be exciting. You know, projects along that line where it's like, not only are we monitoring the river's health and well-being, but I'd also like to really see us essentially revitalizing it, because it feels like our backcountry is getting a little denuded from overuse. And I think that if we could help really replenish and restore the vitality of the riparian zones, I think not only are we going to see healthier water, better fed wildlife that's hopefully staying out of town, and then also hopefully better groundwater as well. So,
Great.
Sorry, that was a really long rambling answer.
That was a great, really long rambling answer, and I love your 2090 scenario, and we should use that in some of our language for things, because it really hits home. 10% is riparian area, and it supplies 90%
Of the wildlife,
of the
yeah.
wildlife
They're
food.
dependent on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
George?
Hi, thanks for applying.
Yeah.
So I see that you were a board member on the Basalt Library Board.
Picking County Library Board.
Oh,
Thank
the
you very
Pickett
much.
County. Oh, I missed that. Okay, well, thank you. I was going to ask you a question about the, so I'll
No,
skip that.
no,
one.
I am. My allegiance is here, Pitkin County Library. Yeah.
So then you must have, you had applied and had been selected from that previous board way back when? to go
Yeah,
through that
this was,
process.
you know, this was before this. I actually stepped down when we were going through the whole expansion thing. So I served those 5 years prior to the library going through the expansion review.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I see that you have quite a diverse resume in terms of volunteering in the community, from the library to the Red Brick
Big Buddy.
Center, Big
Thrift
Buddies,
Store, yeah.
Aspen Thrift. Which has been sort of your favorite and why?
Huh. Well, to be honest, I really enjoyed the library board just because it was something so new and different. I got to really understand operational budgets and these sort of big kind of picture things that I hadn't really had concepts of before. And so in that way, I felt like I learned a lot and expanded sort of my knowledge base a lot with that one. And then on a personal level, the Big Buddy program was super fulfilling, you know, because I get to hang out with somebody and develop a really sweet relationship with her. And yeah, that was really fulfilling.
Oh, good, thanks.
Rachel?
Yeah, thank you for applying as well. I'm kind of thinking a couple things at the same time I'd like to mention. One is that I think that if you are on the board, it's harder to be able to, quote, bring your projects to the board for a grant, because it starts to develop more of a conflict of interest.
Oh, I didn't even realize this board gives grants.
Yeah, it does have.
The Healthy Rivers and Streams Board.
Yeah, they've set a small portion of their budget aside for grants that fall within the original ballot language of the purpose of the fund.
Oh.
So they certainly have coordinated with Roaring Fork Conservancy on some projects and others and other groups and other activities. So that may be a little bit of a conflict for how you want to proceed with your project if you receive funding from the ski company and are going to be able to advance that. And somehow I applaud your ambition on that, because whether you're finding private property owners to work with
Yeah.
to do theirs, or whether you have to go through Forest Service practically at EA to be able to make any changes on their property.
ACES, they're for the forest initiative. They have some, they have that whole hunter smuggler space, the 4,000 acres up there. So we've
Yeah.
kind of been talking about maybe doing a little section up there.
Yeah.
But okay, I didn't realize about the.
But it just, that is just a kind of a separate, again, it's something I think the board itself can sponsor projects and find projects to sponsor and partner with those. But it's always been kind of a, how do you stretch your dollars? And the other element I'm just going to ask about is, because we kind of have what we might be able to look at as the more immediate and in-basin and riparian habitat and our existing water quality levels and things like that. There's been some pretty good detailing of those. But then we have out of basin. Then we have what's going on with the, the state water plan, potential for new significant trans-mountain diversions. And so to really immerse yourself in the water topics, it takes a lot of longer-term commitment, and it takes some travel commitment potentially as well, whether it's the monthly meetings in Glenwood Springs, the 1177 Roundtable. Sometimes our members will take a weekend to go travel to Denver for Water Congress, 3-day conferences, and find out what problems are going on, or projects, watershed assembly. It plays out on multiple levels at this point. And so I want to kind of bring all that back around by asking both, do you have the time to make the commitments for the board meeting and maybe some of these extracurricular learning opportunities? And, kind of along with that, have you done any research? Have you read the watershed plan, or are you connected with the Conservancy or any groups like that? Have you been involved in water prior?
I have not. I haven't been involved. I haven't read that. It's a sort of like a hobby of mine where I always read about whatever's happening in the paper concerning water. But as far as actually reviewing the documents, I haven't. But again, that's sort of like why it was like, oh, I would love to be a part of the board, because it would just immerse me in it, and it's something that I don't know, something that I always feel passionate about. Like, for instance, someone took me to the Holy Cross Wilderness, way like an hour above basalt, and you get up there and you're hiking around, pristine, beautiful, and then all of a sudden you come across these giant diversion things that are just horrendous, and it's like, how is this here, and what is this doing, and it's an interest of mine, kind of trying to understand how all that works, and really recognizing that we're kind of at the headwaters, and I think it's really important that we maintain our pristine water quality here, kind of staunchly, and just particularly with what's going on in the state, the Front Range, the Western Slope. I feel like this zone right here, as well as the Telluride headwaters, are two of the most pristine in the state, and I just feel like they absolutely need to be protected. And as far as the time thing goes, I work for myself from home. I'm a self-employed artist, so I do have time.
Well, and I can tell from your resume with your background in biology, what was it?
Ecology. Yeah.
Ecology, that would certainly be a good interest of yours. So thank you for applying. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Steve?
I see you have quite a background as a teacher over in the Paonia area and at the Waldorf School. And you did lots of kind of nature walk kind of things and so on.
Yeah.
I also taught at the Waldorf School for 1 year.
Oh, did you?
My favorite thing there was to do nature walks down into the river bottom with the kids.
Oh, yeah.
But when you were teaching, did you do those sorts of things where you actually went and you were having the children study and the riparian system? And could you describe what you did there?
Yeah, it would just kind of depend on the age I was with. I was mostly in the kindergarten when I was at the Waldorf School. So the little ones at that age, it's really just about exploring without any scientific sort of information given. It's just about exploring and developing a relationship with nature. So we would mostly just kind of look at wildlife that was on the river, as far as birds and things, and turning over rocks and things like that. And my philosophy with young children is that it's best to not overstimulate, but it's really nice to just provide them with a safe space in nature so that they can explore and develop those deep relationships just by hearing a duck call or watching the way the waves come up on the beach. And then with the older children, we did things where we would take out, the little nets and see what we could catch, talk about water skippers, talk about, the ecology of a stream and who eats what, how all of that stuff works. And it was always fun. At one point too, we had little galoshes, get those on and wade around in the creek. And to my focus, I don't know how the other teachers were, but my focus was always that we leave everything. We don't. If we see a water skipper, we're not gonna catch him and hold him out of the water. He needs to be in the water. So I was really trying to instill in the children that nature's precious, and we can look at it, but we're not going to change it. But yeah, that's a beautiful campus down there, isn't it?
Yeah. Also, I see you have some irrigation experience.
Yeah.
Could you describe what experience you have in irrigation systems?
Sure. That was a couple of different ranches that I caretook for. 4 that I can think of right now. One had an apple orchard, one had a vineyard, and the other one was just hay fields, but they irrigated it. And then the other one was just big gardens. So, you know, it was, most of them had drip, the hay fields obviously had these giant, you know, the giant rainbird sprinkler things that I actually did some research and told the homeowners they were wasting water, but they didn't listen to me. They had these huge gauge rainbirds on there that I just felt like was wasting water. But it was one of those things where it's way up Snowmass Creek, kind of at the headwaters, and those property owners said, well, if we don't use our water, it's going to get taken away. So they're essentially wasting this water. And, you know, I mean, I didn't make it an issue because they were employing me, but it definitely was, you know, I was like, oh, I think they're wasting water. But so it's basically just maintenance of all the sprinkler heads, knowing where all the turnoff valves are in the ground, monitoring drip systems. What else was there? And then all the electronic boxes. So understanding how those things work and having everything set, checking them, making sure that they're running through their cycles. And
So it was all like sprinkler, was there any drip systems that you worked with?
there were drip systems in the vineyard,
like the
yeah.
vineyard?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have some, my point, I just wanted to see how much experience. So you kind of ran into a major problem there is with Colorado water law and the use it or lose it
Totally.
mentality and the thinking that's based on the law.
Oh, yeah.
That happens, that's one of the main problems Colorado's facing right now is how
Oh,
to
yeah.
use water more efficiently.
Well, and I saw a couple of those ranches up there that they're growing hay, so they're wasting all this water to grow hay and then selling the hay for $1 to the neighbor so they can have the agricultural exemption. And then they're watering the fields again to use up all their water, but they're not actually going to cut the hay again. You know, and it was just like, wow, there's a whole bunch of water being wasted, and it's sort of like, I mean, in my eyes, it didn't really seem that honest, like tax-wise, with the agricultural thing, but at any rate, to each his own, I suppose.
Okay, thanks for your comments.
Yeah.
I don't have any questions, but thanks, Alyssa. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much
All right.
for your time.
Thanks, guys.
And generally, we get back to people in a couple of weeks, so we don't make a decision here.
Great. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. George, come on up.
Thank you, guys.
You've seen us drill and, you know, drill people during this process, so I'll start off again with the same question. What do you feel that you bring to the Healthy Rivers and Stream Board, and what do you think some of the priorities are with the board, or should be with the board?
I bring a degree in Master of Science in Adult Environmental Education. I worked for 20-plus years as a lake manager. In that job, it was research physical, chemical, and biological properties of water in the streams, in the groundwater, and most importantly, in the lake. I was also the chief grant writer and educator. So I would go to the schools and everything from elder hostel to nursery school and everything in between. I've sat on a whole number of boards, and I know what it is to sit on boards and how to act and what Robert's Rules of Orders are, and so I kind of know where you guys are sitting now. I work at the airport now, part-time. Pretty much can set my own hours, and we had a kind of an interesting couple of weeks there. And that's kind of my qualifications. It's done a lot of publications and stuff. I volunteered from the beginning of the Roaring Fork Conservancy And in fact, the outgoing gal said I should apply for Rick Lafaro's job, but I did not. I did not want to go back to full-time work. I'm kind of semi-retired, and I manage one ditch, and that ditch services about 600 acres of mostly agricultural land. When you manage a ditch, you quickly learn what water law and case law is all about. And when you move west of the Mississippi, you own the water, you own the bed. The lowest priority is the biota. East of the Mississippi, the water is a commonly shared resource, where the biota is at the top of the list. So it's quite different coming west. We have about 4,000 lakes in Wisconsin and 2 water lawyers. Here you have 2 lakes and 4,000 water. What I see is kind of one important aspect of what we've got out there. We have 10 miles of gold medal trout waters. The biota speaks to the quality of that water because it sees it year in, year out. So we know water's pretty good quality. Most of the problem we have is probably more of, since the watershed is so well protected and so much of it in federal land that there's no development. That what you see in the springtime is sediment runoff from the upper parts of the watershed, which is because the watersheds are so steep, you get a lot of this natural runoff. When I was working land-based stuff, you just would keep on educating people. Example of education is if you live and your runoff from your land goes into a storm sewer, your land might as well be right on the river because you have the same effect. There's no mitigation whatsoever from point A into the river. And people have to know about water quality, what they can do, how to fertilize their lawn or not fertilize their lawn. When we were kind of lucky when septic systems where I lived would fail, they would fail to the surface. Here, with the rocky rubble soil, we probably have a lot of septic systems failing to the groundwater, which is really hard to, if not impossible, to detect. We can't do a lot about the natural runoff. It'd be pretty monstrous stuff, but we can do a lot in the municipalities. When you look at a natural environment, the load of a low development residential is 1 to 2 magnitude orders of sediment to hydrocarbons, lead, all those things. When you look at a dense setting like Aspen, it could be maybe 2 to 3 magnitude orders more. So protecting water quality may be more focused towards the urban areas here, because there's, even in rural areas, there's some development, there's some agriculture, but the agriculture is pretty sacred. It involves growing hay, which means the soil's never tilled up. The plants hold the soil in. The farmers rarely, if ever, fertilize or herbicide. So the rural parts are pretty stable as well.
Other questions, Steve?
George, thanks for applying for this board. I've known you for years and known that you have different qualifications in water, and I'm impressed reading your resume, different things that listed that you have done. But could you describe what you've done with water for the Little Elk Creek subdivision?
We're fortunate enough to hook up with the Rural Water Association, which granted a Phase 1 study and a Phase 2 implementation plan. The Phase 1 study, we identified, that watershed is pretty secure. If there's, if there's going to be a problem, it's going to be a problem generated by us. And so in order, the first step of that is to, comes into Phase 2, is to start a way of educating people. And so what I did on the Phase 2 is I wrote like a 45-page how-to, lawn fertilizer, roads, rooftop runoff, washing your cars, checking your septic systems regularly, and so we've got a database of mostly all of the people who have pumped and when they pumped, and we'd like to kind of bring that up to standards. It would certainly help if you guys could put in the septic system leachate facility up in the landfill. Right now, people are reticent in pumping because the pumping cost is so high. It's $500 or $1,000. Most all of that is in disposal. You've got a lot of properties with septic systems. What we did in Wisconsin was we passed a law. We said, you got a wastewater treatment plant, you got to take septage. You can charge an extra premium for the BOD load, but you got to take it. So pumping in Wisconsin is a lot different than pumping here. When people like a $1,000 bill to pump their tanks, it's they think about it. And the soil here is not that good, and the more you make that septic system work, the better you're going to, or the less you're going to impact that groundwater. So that's kind of what we did. It was a pretty fun project.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you again for applying, and it really bring a world of knowledge to the table. It's quite apparent. Can you tell me, what do you think are some of the biggest threats over time? We all know of individual reaches that should be improved or riverbanks restored, but I think a lot of our work is kind of strategizing how to make sure we're not really further depleted, and may have to wrestle with some very tough issues given the conditional water rights. So we've discussed things such as a water park to use the recreational in-channel diversion, and certainly if we were able to find or buy water rights that would help us keep all the streams. We tend to think so much of the Roaring Fork, but there's a lot of little reaches as well.
Yeah. I think maybe we have more of a water quantity issue than a water quality issue. That's my short answer, and that's where it takes a lot of finesse and a lot of knowledge of the laws, water laws, and the transportation stuff, and following the Colorado River Compact, and it's pretty complicated. And I've been doing this only like running a ditch for 12 years, and so I've hit the sides of all of the water reg stuff, but I'm by far not an expert. I've probably got about enough knowledge to be dangerous.
But it sounds like you're willing to put the time in to continue to come up to speed on those issues and offer sound advice, and you have the time to be able to travel or make other meetings other than the once monthly?
Yeah, sure. Okay. I just have to know a little in advance, and then I schedule myself out.
Thank you.
George?
Are you familiar with some of the projects that the Healthy Rivers and Stream Board has done in the last few years?
Not really. I know they were doing some water rights stuff, and that's about all I know.
Yeah, they've done a lot of studies from the frying pan to the fork, and even I think at Pepper Creek. And so a lot of talk about quality. When you talk about quantity versus quality, I think they've done a lot of work in terms of quality. Mm-hmm. But just to follow up with Rachel's question, knowing that, or perhaps not knowing that, in the past, the board has spent a considerable amount of time and energy in terms of setting some baseline studies for the watershed, and then also funding certain projects to enhance the watershed. I'm just trying to figure out or hear from you where you think the priorities should go in the next few years, and what sort of is what would you bring to accomplish that?
Well, I could bring more to the water quality side of the board rather than the quantity side. I follow what the Board for Conservancy Studies have done, and I guess they're fed into the Healthy River Board. Been not directly involved with those too much. At times, I'm a technical advisor, but not too often. They've got a pretty good staff down there and good leadership.
Yeah. One last question. You've been in the Valley for quite a while. Have you served on any other local boards?
No local boards. I volunteer for hospice, and yeah, I've been on our subdivision board, but nothing else besides that. I figured this board would be kind of something that I could be a helpful participant in.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you guys.
Thanks, George.
Talk about the Forest Service meeting.
Sure. We've had an opportunity to visit with Karen Troyer at the staff level, and I've identified at least 3 topics at the staff level that we'd like to recommend be covered. And then, of course, any additional items that the board has. But I thought I'd start off just listing those 3. One is an update on the high use issues in the Maroon Bell and Snowmass Wilderness. I think particularly over the summer we saw some newspaper articles and had some discussion, and I think the Forest Service has some additional information that they can share with us. We'd like to discuss the possibility of an MOU for collaborative work on a resource management plan in Castle Creek Valley. Really the background on that is the board had given direction for community development to pursue an area plan up there, and as we got into it, there's so many different so many different entities with jurisdictions as well as landowners. Our feeling was, as we started talking to the Forest Service and some of the private holdings and looking at it, that we may be better off looking at more of a resource management plan with the Forest Service up in that area, as well as then looking at our own area plan. And so the Forest Service, who has certainly been strapped for resources, I think has found an opportunity to put some resources towards, and Cindy's here, I can talk to that about this, but has found resources where they could participate in that kind of planning effort with us in that upper Castle Creek Valley area. And so we're hoping to sit down while Karen's here and talk about the possibility of a memorandum of understanding between the county and Forest Service to run that process. How'd I do on summarizing that?
Great.
Cindy?
The only thing that I heard was Upper Castle Creek, and because of all the issues the Forest Service has with all of their trailheads that go down as far as Conundrum and
I'm sorry,
all of that.
yeah.
We've decided to expand our scope as far as looking at some of the demands on parking and that sort of thing, and demands on the uses, but a real specific look at the Upper Valley as far as, if you really look at the map, it's mostly Forest Service with the inholdings of a couple private properties. So if you look at that Upper Valley, you've got now ACES owning Toclot, but you've got John Wilcox's operation as well as the Historical Society at Ashcroft are on Forest Service lands. So the activities that go there might impact the county, but they're on forest properties. So we're trying to work more specifically on those interactions.
So, John or Cindy, would the MOI then include these other stakeholders? Because I thought the original idea we talked about was developing a master plan for the area and bringing all these entities together. So are we still going in that direction, or are we just going to focus with an MOI between the county and the Forest Service and not bring in these other stakeholders?
No, the idea is that I've actually been keeping in touch with the stakeholders to a certain initial level. The idea is to bring stakeholders in, but that the jurisdictions, if you will, have to work together on some of the data gathering. So the first phase is data gathering, and in April we want to hold a public meeting to get more from the stakeholders, and we're actually hoping to use some of their volunteer time to help us with some of the data gathering on some of the parking lot issues and trailhead issues, because we had the thought of potentially even having an intern for both jurisdictions working with us, but we know that that's kind of a lot of more money and housing and all of that, so we know that's kind of a pipe dream at this point, so we're looking for some volunteer help on that. But we've done a lot of scoping, if you will, of what needs to be done, and we're hoping that you'll agree with this process, because when we got into it, just that Upper Valley it wasn't large enough for the Forest Service interests with all the things that they're doing in the area to really warrant their participation as much. So, anyway.
Okay.
Rachel?
You know, although it sounds more elaborated, I can see some real value to that because, you know, even just the recent discussion about the Maroon Creek Caucus, the Castle Creek Caucus, and, you know, if it's a bigger, more expanded area, I think we have a better opportunity to see that caucus reinvigorated and, you know, giving some input on things up the larger Castle Creek as opposed to just the Ashcroft area. So I'm supportive.
Yeah, it will parallel with the master planning process, so we'll have a lot of great data to inform both processes, and I think you're right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what was the other third topic with the
those were the three. So we had the update on the I'm sorry, general district update was the third one.
Oh,
I got
just
out of
on
order there. Yeah, so she just wants to talk about general priorities and such.
Yeah, I was going to ask, as part of that, we probably get an update in terms of the 8th Street facility, what their future plans are and how that's progressing.
How they're working through that.
And then, do we know if Scott is going to be able to make it here? Is he planning or no?
I have not heard if Scott's going to be able to make it. To my knowledge right now, it's just Karen. Have you heard anything to the...
No, but we have a conversation with her tomorrow.
Okay, because I remember, and I forwarded it on to you a while back, John, that I had received an email from Scott months ago about his concern on illegal growth sites in the national forest, and wondered if we could have some sort of play in how to address that and help them with that issue.
So we'll explore that again with Karen. It wasn't on the list when we talked. Yeah.
Any other topics for that agenda next week?
I was going to say, I don't know if there's any just scheduling updates they can give us about various ongoing EISs or EAs. I mean, I know the big Forest Service EIS has been released, but were there other, you know, just checking through with maybe Chris and John Ely to see if there are other updates that we'd like for progress of. processes that often take a long time. You know, I don't know if they have federal changes they're expecting that they're going to need to deal with, or you know, can even update us on what the federal budget is. I think it's been set through September of this year,
Yeah.
but you know, I will be going back to DC with NACO with public lands in February. So if there's any updates that he'd like to share with us, so that I can have that knowledge back in DC, that would be really helpful.
Okay.
Okay.
We're about 10 minutes before our scheduled time for the internet. Should we take a 10-minute break and get set up?
We can do that.
Okay.
Come back at 2 o'clock.
George,
Yeah.
do you mind?
Welcome back. Today is Tuesday, January 6, 2015, Board of County Commissioners work session. And we've got a preview of our new Picken County website. And Pat and Nate are here to present.
Thank you. So yeah, we have made a lot of progress on the website. We'll first go through our website, and then we'll go through our intranet as well. Just kind of touching on the items that you see on the screen here. We'll go through the design choices that we've made. A lot of them have been made because of the fact that statistically about 70% of website access is now from mobile devices. So we'll show what kind of what design choices we made for that, and then show what responsive is. That goes right along with mobile device access to the website. We'll then demonstrate the actual functionality of the website itself, and then get into some of the department pages, and then we can go through any questions that you have. Just kind of go through a discussion there. So without further ado.
And one thing I'd just like to add is that we are still working on it. This is not a live website yet. It's a draft website. We've done a lot, but we still have some more to do. And any suggestions that you have are welcome, but knowing that this is not quite ready for prime time.
Just a quick question. So we've already completed a separation from the city of Aspen, not the website though. But when that happens, is the city? What's the city doing?
I'll be working with Ruth. She's always been the webmaster over there. That's been the head of the web page for Aspen Pitkin. I'll be working with her. We have a unique opportunity, and I was going to kind of touch on that later in the discussion. But we'll be basically she and I'll be working together over a period of time to forward to department pages when that department is comfortable and happy with their new page. We'll do what's called a soft launch, and we can talk more about that after we go through everything. That's okay. All right. So this is the look of the page. Now you'll have to keep in mind it is scrunched on this screen.
Oh, so the buttons don't show. It depends on what size you're looking at.
It does, and without spending time messing around with the resolution of the projector and everything, the way that it will look on a typical laptop like Phyllis has, it will have 3 buttons across the top, which right now we'll have Be Connected, County Commissioner Meetings, Picken Outside, Picken County on YouTube, Airport, and Newsflash. We have control over all these buttons and can edit those at any time. The reason for the buttons, again, is because if you are accessing this from a mobile device, I don't know if I'm sure you've all had the frustration of trying to zoom in and get to that one little spot to push on your phone or on your iPad. This gives them a whole area, a whole button to push on. Actually, the company we're working with, Civic Plus, they've never done a design like this, and they're actually going to use it as a new template. They like it so much.
That was my part.
Yep, and that was all. that was Pat.
But they did. We pushed them because the Civic Plus company has a sort of a template that they're comfortable with that other jurisdictions use. I think Basalt is a Civic Plus Snowmass, Town of Snowmass, and they all have kind of the same look and feel. And we really pushed them. We pushed them outside of their comfort zone by looking at some other websites all over the world. There was one in Sweden and one in Hawaii that we really liked, and we kind of took the best of those sites and tried to put it in ours. And I think we've done a good job of coming up with a more cutting-edge look and more user-friendly. Were you going to show the other? Oh, you didn't mean to do that.
Thank you for not having a picture of Maroon Bells.
Oh, you know that Civic Plus, before we had to put our own custom pictures in, guess what they had there? They had Maroon Bells, and we're like, yeah, there was, that Maroon Bells got in there. Not that we don't love the Maroon Bells, but this is a very interesting picture of Maroon Creek that you don't see that often, with Buttermilk on one side and Highlands on the other, looking straight up Maroon Creek. So this is kind of a different view. Since we're on the subject of pictures, we did do a lot of work to get pictures for every season. We have a couple, 2 or 3 for every season that are professional, really nice shots. And we went to great extremes to find some wonderful pictures so that it looks, so it's appealing when you land on it.
So then to get back into the design and the mobile sense of it, and the term responsive, I'm not sure if you've heard of it before or not, but what responsive means is that no matter what device you're on, your website will work on it. It used to be where there was a standard 4x3 screen, and then you had a standard mobile phone size. Now there's all kinds of different devices and all kinds of different sizes. So with the responsive design, as it changes, so does the site. So now this could be what your phone may look like. And you can scroll down, the buttons will be there, easy to touch, easy to read, easy to see. The menu items are still there. So it acts much like a mobile device menu. Now that may be a little hard to read there, but that's showing all the different departments there. The main thing that people are using on their mobile devices, however, is that search. So I'm looking for, and we were very adamant on having that. They kept having it. We kept asking them to make it bigger and bigger and bigger, because we want people to use that. Not only will it get them to what they're trying to find quickest, but it will also tell us what they're looking for. So as time goes by, we'll get analytics that will say, hey, people are searching for this time period. Let's put one of these big buttons up there, that on there, so they don't have to worry about searching for it. So we have to learn from our citizens by having them use that search option.
But Mr. Eder, before you put in the name of your restaurant in that search bar, that search option there is not live until the website is live, so it's not working yet.
Correct, because the site that we're looking at now, where you see it's co-pickencountry.civicplus.com, that lives on Civic Plus's web servers. It's hidden to the internet. It's not searchable by Google right now. So this is something you can reach by the internet, but only you have to have that address to reach it.
Are you guys going to put that in the newspaper?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Rob?
Yeah.
I want to drill down a little bit on that so I understand it better, because I know that some websites you go to and they will have a search, tab or button, and so you put in something and it goes to Google to find information. It doesn't necessarily just find information on that website. And so are you saying that once this is operational, it would be able to pull up a restaurant directory in Aspen, or you could search and find rental cars at the airport on our website, or this will just stay to searching things that are Pitkin County business?
Correct. This will the index, the search will index everything that's in pitkincounty.com. So everything that lives within that domain will be indexed.
Okay.
All text, everything, even if a picture has metadata or a description about that picture, that will be indexable as well. So every word, every number, if somebody's looking for a case number or a date from a certain period, document number,
Okay.
that all of that will be indexed.
So resolutions, or what was the decision at this meeting 4 years ago or something like that?
Correct.
And then would we have a separate link that, if someone did say, fine dining restaurants in the tab, that might then pop up, this is not information available through this website, here's a link to the Chamber of Commerce? Do we have anything that would send people in the right place to look?
We have our community option here. We can add, we can change, these menu items here everything is fully editable. Now, what you suggested there is a very good idea, and is something we plan to do. And the reason is not only because people don't know that anybody, either a visiting individual, a tourist, or a citizen, they don't know if it's city business, county business, chamber business.
Yeah.
so we can have links on our page to their pages. So if they search for lift tickets, if we have a link to Aspen Skiing Company, they can then click on that through our website, and it'll tell Aspen Skiing Company that they came to their page from our page.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of how, again, if you're even not in town and you Google, Aspen County, and this is going to come up, and then you start trying to search as if it's for reservations or things to do with the kids or things like that. And so I don't see it as needing a lot of different links as much as to one link that
Chamber of Commerce,
then they can get every other link they need.
Right, and then also, again, once we do go live and that search bar is live, we'll know what people are searching for. So if they come in there and they're poking around, don't find something, they type in the search lift tickets or Chamber of Commerce, we'll know that, and we'll see how many times people are typing in that or something similar.
Okay, thank you.
I guess that raises a question for me in terms of, when you started out on this project to create a new website, what was the overall objective that was put forth? I mean, is the overall objective to become a search within Pitkin County, or is the overall objective government services? I'd almost, and I'm just debating the issue, I don't have a set, but in brainstorming, I'd almost rather have something across the banner atop saying, this is the website for Pitkin County Government Services. And, so if you're not looking for a government service, go somewhere else.
You're spot on there, Rob. And actually, if you notice, Pitkin County is in our upper left, and then government is in the center, right below the search. Now, by no means was this meant to be a phone book.
Yeah.
This is meant to be a self-service for citizens.
And for citizens that are looking for information for something that might fall under county business.
Correct.
And so, and within that scope, I just add, I think there were two other goals. One was creating our own identity out on the web as the county, and two, the previous website was difficult for many of our departments to update just the content management system, and so we had departments creating their own websites off of our own main page. From a content management perspective, this is a much easier tool to use.
And easier tool to use for the public. This is going to be so much easier for the public to find what they're looking for with fewer clicks, especially when that search engine gets up and running. A lot of people, that's all they'll do. They just go, I'm looking for, and find it. But just the way, if you show the drop-down menu. So,
let's say I want to.
I want to, and you've got choices here. And again, as we start using it, we can adapt this to be what people mostly want. We're trying to, we've got a good start here. But I think that user friendliness, internally and externally, was a big goal.
Which kind of leads to another question that I had, and it has to do with just kind of logistically what we're trying to accomplish today. This is put in as a preview to, and over 4 years we've had letters put in front of us that we all end up wordsmithing and saying, oh, what if this were a little darker blue? Or, I'm sure we could get into like all day long about those sorts of things. But what's the logistical steps moving forward now? You're previewing the Board of County Commissioners on this right now. I'm assuming you want some feedback on various things from the board. I'm assuming you've been getting various feedback from department heads, staff members, and that sort of thing. You had talked about that the I'm looking for will create some analytics that will bring back information to how we want to change this down the road. But are we going to be doing a little beta testing and getting feedback about various things? And how much feedback do you want, and how much feedback are you just kind of want to get started and then change it 6 months from now when we get some analytics?
I mean, certainly, there's nothing keeping us from getting a little public beta, which might be kind of fun, you know, just get a group of people that we know and say, hey, check it out, tell us what you think, wouldn't hurt. But I think we also were thinking as we roll it out very softly, that we would adapt it as we went. So we're open.
And to touch on a couple of those things, the content management, the company we're working with, Civic Plus, has been excellent. We already have had users, employees that have called their support when they weren't able to reach me, and they answered the questions, they helped them out, lickety split, super polite, super quick, really great and helpful. The tools that they have built in here, because Civic Plus is built for municipality business. So all the tools that are in here are focused on city and county business for the majority. They do very few states, mostly city and counties. So they have items in here that we'd like to demonstrate, like their agendas in minutes. Their notify me, a couple other items as well that we'd like to show you how those work.
I mean, for instance, a lot of those main buttons kind of link to sites that are already existent, like the Pick and Connects and the airport, which has got its own websites. Is it the intention for those websites to then morph into something that looks like it's within the same business? I mean, if you hit the airport button, for instance, you go to the website that we're all familiar with for Pickens County Airport, but that looks nothing like this website.
I think that's okay, and no, the intention is not to take the airport's relatively new website and morph it, but it is to, if we can do anything to brand it to Pickens County, so the fact that we have something to the airport from the Pickens County page helps to let people know that the airport is part of Pickens County, which has not always been the case, you know, in the past. So whereas we're not planning on morphing that website or the Pick and Connect, it's going to be a link to it. It's becomes part of our neighborhood, so to speak. And I think it's okay, personally, to have some sites that are like that. I don't think they all have to be in here. I think as long as people connect them to Pickens County government.
And,
in my opinion.
And another thing to touch on, we took a year's period of time with the current site and weeded out what was county-only pages to find out which ones had the most hits or what had the most searches. And that's what we've put up here, excepting like jail inmates is one of the largest requested pages, believe it or not. But the other ones, as far open space and trails has more hits than anything. So the Pitkin Outside app, you know, is something we definitely want to push because it's a wonderful product, a wonderful new tool available to citizens. So that makes, you know, quite a lot of sense. The county commissioner meetings, that's in the top 10. So that obviously we want that to have big strong presence in one of these buttons here as well.
Well, we won't necessarily completely rely on analytics for how this website operates, because from my world, the public relations side of things and marketing side of things, is that there are things that people might not even know about, and the reason they haven't clicked on them and we don't get the analytics on them is because they aren't aware of them. So I also see this site as a place to push out information that we want to do. Say during election season, we can turn one of these big buttons into voter registration. You know, if we have you know, something new that we're doing in Pickens County, or maybe we've got a bunch of storm cycles and the Road and Bridge Department wants to put out information about plowing schedules or something, we can turn a button on, you know, we can make it a button. So it wouldn't necessarily be something that people were clicking on, but it'll be something we want them to click on.
And the airport project, the library remodel, those are a couple of good examples that would make perfect sense for where the public is hearing about it, they want to know about it. We put it right there, a large button, and they can click right there and get directed to the information, whether it's within the Pickens County site or whether it's outside of it.
George?
So how will citizens interact with this in terms of being able to provide feedback? So for example, we have a new website you've launched recently called Picken County Connects. So are you going to integrate that into this? Or
It is.
Be connected.
Well, that's what that is. So that's
So
Picken.
be connected is that button there does in fact launch to the
Okay.
to the Picken County Connect page,
Okay.
as well as join the discussion. Some people see that as redundancy, but it's actually good to do that for certain things because one person's mind does not work the same as the others.
And that's still, so we have, within this, we have two different service providers. So we've got the service provider for the website, and we have a service provider for Picken County Connects.
Well, we have a service provider for Granicus, your streaming, we have a service provider for,
And that's, yeah, that's not unusual, and you know, what this does is it gives us some flexibility. You know, we felt that the forum through, you know, the Picken County Connects was the right kind of forum because it vets and does a number of things that just like a blog website or such wouldn't do, and so it integrates well.
Okay.
Rachel? Sorry, go ahead. If you want to.
I was going to say, on that, so you saw that one button where it does link out to the Pick and Connect, like the county commissioner meetings here. That button keeps it internally, even though it is using what would be actually considered an external service of Granicus, but it has all the videos here and available for viewing right there from that button.
I was just going to ask, kind of back to that main page, where it has the tab to hit the Pitkin outside, and it may just be because the screen is small, but does it have any, so it's the trail system app, okay, that's good. I just want to make sure it has something to explain what you're getting if you go to that.
Yes, and
the others all had some lines.
And when you when it is on a this has been shrunken down to 4:3 to fit this projector. So when it's on a 16:9 screen, it has two lines of 3 boxes.
Okay.
So that would be the upper right box, if you will.
And then if you scroll down a little further, I think you had one that was either news alerts or
News Flash.
News Flash. Yeah. Now, is that what you would perceive if we're saying, you know, the bridge on the Crystal River is out? You know,
Not
there's
Pitkin Alert, and you know, if that's confusing to you, maybe we would change what we call that. But we have Pitkin Alert on the buttons on the side. See the little thing that looks like a computer screen?
I guess
This would be press releases.
Okay, because what I was thinking of is if people are picking it up on the smaller format, and so the buttons are shrunk down, but they come up in order. If it was fast news we were trying to get out, is there a way that it could become, quote, the banner ad? Or something on top,
We
you know,
have-
so that someone looked it up and it wasn't like, they'd have to go to the bottom to find out the road's out.
If we have a crisis,
Right.
then we will use Pitkin Alert. We will continue to use Pitkin Alert to get the word out about our crises. But if we also have another tool on this website, which is it's a what do you call it? A scroll across the top.
Yeah, it's an alert system.
Yeah, it's like a banner, but a scroll.
What happens is it puts actually a red flashing light on the top, and then it has information. So if, let's say that there's a wildfire.
Yeah, or the road's closed, or
Road's
something, yeah, we
closed,
just really want to be the
severe
first thing people see.
accident,
Okay,
something like that. It'll be flashing red right across the top, no matter what you're on. It'll always be at the very top. So we have that module available to turn on as we see fit, controlled by, you know, county management and public
Okay.
safety.
We
Okay.
don't want to try to compete too much with Pitkin Alert because we've made such strides.
And I understand entirely, I just was wondering what news flash or news alert meant at the bottom, and
And
now I
maybe
know.
that's not,
and-
that was the Civic Plus word, I could call that something else, just news, maybe, so that people don't
News
expect it to be
releases.
too flashy.
Yeah.
You know.
But so then one thing that's really great about this too is there is citizen engagement on this website as well. So if we look at the agendas and minutes, is one thing I'd like to show you. This is a really great tool. What it does is it takes all of our boards, all of our any group really. A caucus could live here. We see we have the Board of County Commissioners, Healthy Rivers Board, Open Space and Trails Board, And Janet actually had this one is live and real and ready to go for their January 8th OST board meeting. So you can simply click on the item and it takes you to their agenda. You can also do an option of downloading the agenda. Now, after the meeting is complete, you can attach minutes to it here. So here's just an example that I put into the Board of County Commissioners. You simply click on the minutes, and it'll bring up your example minutes there, or your minutes for that. Now, what's really cool about this is the citizen engagement. So let's say that I want to, I constantly go back to the website, or I call Charlotte or call the main number because I want the minutes from the last meeting, and where are they and when can I get them? We can direct people to the website to notify me. Now, what Notify Me is another tool that's built into this system, and you can sign up for text messages or emails. And once we're live, I highly encourage everybody to take a look at this and encourage people to do this. Now, you do need to have an email address that's registered. So if anybody can't just go sign up for it. It has to be an actual person. So there's no spamming, and you know who the person. It's a confirmed email address. So we don't have a bad list of emails.
Calm.
So then I prefer to receive HTML emails when available. And so then we have the Notify Me, and then these are all just different items that are under that Notify Me tool. There's job postings, there's the news flash items, there's calendars, and there's agenda senders. So let's say I want to be emailed every time that there is any updates on anything for the Board of County Commissioners. I simply do that, and now whenever there's a change to an agenda, I'll get an email saying this agenda has been updated. When the minutes have been uploaded, I'll get an email saying the minutes are available. When there's a new meeting assigned, I'll get a notice saying there's a meeting on this date. And you can opt in and out to any and every one of those. So our citizens, if they, that are interested, they may come here just looking to go to the Board of County Commissioners or to the Open Space and Trails, but then they may look through this Notify Me section and say, wow, there's a lot of other things here that I'd really like to know about. Sign me up. So they have the option then to opt in to see these, get these items, and it ends up bringing them back to the site more and more frequently, and they get more and more familiar with the tool, and then it gives us the return of the citizens having self-service, so the employees of Pitkin County have more resources available to themselves. This is
Quite an upgrade from our old system. I'm really glad to see it.
And it'll get better as it's used and we have the analytics and we can, adjust links. By the nature of our organization, we've got a lot of links on our website, and so that makes it a challenge to navigate. And so the more we can learn about where the public's interest lies, and we can put those front and center either in the big buttons or at the top of lists or what have you, we'll make it easier and easier to navigate for the 80 or 90% of what the public really wants to see.
Definitely, and then to touch on that on the opposite side, if our analytics are showing us that a page is only visited once or twice or 3 times within within a 3-month period or a year's period of time, that 1 to 3 visits is most likely the person who manages the page. So that page needs not exist, right? So that can then be a cleanup method as well. So it's not too cluttered, doesn't have too many things, it's not too overwhelming with those menu options.
I noticed that on my iPad, the meetings kind of came up separate. Is that kind of a Mobi?
Which link did you push? Which one?
This is the agendas calendar.
On the agendas, okay. On the calendar or for the?
It's not the calendar. It's the meetings, the agendas and minutes.
Yes. So the it is a responsive design, so it's the same content, but it's just restructuring it to fit your screen. But
Sure.
these are other called
Well,
modules. Yep. So exactly.
I
So
mean, it
that's-
looks dramatically different than the kind of
So that's-
pull-down windows that you've got for if you open Board of County Commissioners, the meetings come up below it.
Correct.
As opposed to
If-
here, you're flipping to an
see-
additional
If you
page.
see there, if I change my browser to that size, then it does it here as well. So that's exactly.
So
how
it's
it
the
does it.
browser size versus the browser versus the hardware.
It's basically the real estate that the user has to work with is what we're trying to make most useful and user friendly.
I will say one of the things that I really love when using my iPad is when you get to websites that have kind of Mobi sites or this type of thing, that there be a button that says revert to just a Windows site.
Sure.
Because you get used to seeing something in one way, and I know, like what you said, when you want to push on that button, you kind of enlarge it,
Right.
and then you push on the button. But if you're used to seeing something one way, and then all of a sudden it throws you to a new format, you know, that's something that I like having on various sites.
I can definitely look into that to see if that is an option. That may be possible to do just by squeezing the screen on your
Because sometimes I use a notebook, sometimes I use
Sure.
my iPad, I'm at my desk with my computer, so you're seeing it in three different ways, and the brain has a way of kind of the muscle memory of go here and then here and then here and then here, and that's the information I want.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, and that's we're kind of in that in that changing mind frame
Yeah.
though, where you have an app for that, right? How many times have you heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you also have a web page for that,
Yeah.
a website for that, and they act differently, they look differently, but the wording's the same. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what we're getting at here. Is it's in a sense almost turns your web page into an app without having to build an app.
Unless you're on your computer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is some give and take
Yeah.
on this type of design, but I will definitely look in to see if there's an option to revert
Yeah.
back to full
So a lot of times you log onto a website on your iPad and it says, do you want the Mobi site? And you have an option to hit yes or no.
Correct, and that is more of the old school
Okay.
design process.
See, I'm already old school.
No,
You're already
but no worries.
This is my last meeting.
But that is an option that we can very well see if that is possible.
We
to
need some
do.
younger people up here, I guess.
Well, really old school is where I am, and that little piece of paper that Pat handed out.
More your style.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely understand what you're getting at there.
I'll try to be more new school next year.
I'll see if that is an option. Really, I think what they're getting at, if you imagine this, if somebody is wanting to see, now you can select just one area. It only shows areas that have active information. So you'll see that you have the translator advisory, planning and zoning, all these different, the caucuses, etc. You can choose to just have the Open Space and Trails Board here, and then it'll search just for that. And now, possibly, let's see if I eat my own words here. Yeah. So now it just shows you the one when you shrink it. But the idea is when you have a small screen, and if you have every one of those categories selected, you may be scrolling like this for quite a long time. You might be scrolling down on your device for quite a long time to find the information you're looking for when you have all categories shown.
Anything else? Any questions, or what do you think? What do you think?
I love it compared to what we're using now, the Aspen Pitkin website. As we play with this and try it out, how much feedback do you want from us in terms of if we have
I will definitely do
suggestions?
that.
Yeah, it's a great great question. I was hoping to actually make it a learning opportunity for everyone. There is a button on this menu here. One second here.
We're starting to get a lot of people in for this one, and I'm hoping we can do it first for those.
Yeah.
It's your fault.
Yeah, there's some people that sat from the interviews too, Dave.
I know, because they're from Hillman.
Well, it's blocking it out with this screen view, but right here there's an option.
See where the little hand is? Wiggle the hand.
Yeah, right down at the lower corner. It's called
Notify me, or?
it's actually report a concern.
Oh.
And report a concern is an option that we're going to have there for. There's a pothole on the road. Okay, so that's an option. Then it emails off to Road and Bridge. There's a bear in this trash can again. That'll go to animal safety. My neighbors are making too much noise. That will go to the sheriff's office. Those types of things. So instead of it's a little bit again self-service or pointing the citizen in the right direction instead of having them call that main phone number to find out where to report those items. So I would encourage. I'm going to update that form, and I will email you all with instructions on how to get to it. But I'm going to update that form to have report a concern, and we may change the name of that. That option there. That can be one of the things you suggest as well. But there'll be an option in a drop-down menu to report a concern. It asks you simply for your name and your email address, and then what the category is, and it'll be website. And then you can type in any suggestions that you have there, and then that'll come into our queue, and then we can look at making those suggestions on the website committee.
So we're going to make you use the website to report your concerns with the website. So, do you get that?
Does that make sense?
Does that make sense?
Great. So again, I'll be writing up very simple instructions on how to do that. So it's a two clicks to get it done.
And if that
You
gets
can
weird,
handwrite your concerns on
I was
a
just
piece
going
of
to say,
paper.
I was going to say, if that's too weird for you, just handwrite them and give them to me, or do a print screen, whatever you want to do, just whatever you want.
Yeah.
But this is one way to do it. This will be the most efficient way to do it, but we'll take your concerns however we can get them.
Definitely.
We are over our allotted time, but doesn't mean that we can't continue. I don't know if the board have more questions or.
Now we did plan to touch a bit on the intranet as well. We could give it just a few minutes on that. The intranet is the other portion of this project. Now we're looking to basically what the intranet is a one-stop shop for an employee to have all the information, the applications, the documents they work on, all in one location. So like it says there, would have about 85% of their work navigation from the intranet. The page this is just a wireframe, and as it says here, this is currently in development. But this would be our Pitt County intranet. Again, it's squished a bit from the screen. But what we have here is we have Pick and Alert right on top. And this is kind of hard to read on that screen. Let me see if I can zoom it in for us a bit here. Employee exchange. So employees would be able to post, like I could say, I'm in search of a filing cabinet for my desk. Please email me if you have one. Announcements. So this would be where birthdays, new hires, anniversaries, all those types of items that Charlotte or other managers email out about to all county. This can be a place where this is where the all county information can go. The Pitt County calendar that Charlotte releases can be entered into one location here, rather than having to manually enter the information as she does. It'll be pulled intelligently into this calendar from one location. Now it'll still be distributed as she has it as well to all county, but it'll also be available here for the employees. Then there'll also be there are simple resources, quick links to your mail, your calendar, and your drive. There'll be a help option with FAQs. And then admin is only folks that have the ability to update the page. Now, just an example as the department page, we have the Business Information and Technology Services here. So again, this is just a wireframe of what we're looking at doing, but that exchange could still show there. Each department will have the ability to make their page look as they see fit, and as it's best for their use. Then they'd have a specific calendar for their department, as well as commonly accessed documents and their own drive folder for their department. Other things they can do, there's picking alerts again, just as an example. You can add personal gadgets as well, which is like you can add other, you can add RSS feeds, news feeds. So if you're constantly jumping over to look at something from this, from the city or from any kind of RSS feed, you can add that there. You can add other individuals' calendars, so a department head can add the calendars of their employees onto this page so they can see what their employees are doing at certain times as well. So again, this is just a wireframe. It's not exactly how it'll look, but the functionality is to be the efficiency, a kind of one-stop shop for employees to have all of their applications and their documents in one location.
Very good. Welcome to 21st
So we
century.
can work while we're on vacation now.
Yeah, there's never an excuse not to be able to work.
And what sort of timeline are we looking at this point?
And that's the last line there. Timeline, we're looking at February 9 is what we're talking for our soft launch. Now, the unique opportunity we have is with having the existing web page, we have our information out there already. So we don't have to have this new web page live and going right on February 9th. So what we'll do is on February 9, we will move from this co-pickencounty.civic+ to pickencounty.com, where it's live on the internet. Where it's live on the internet, because that other one is not live on the internet. And then it'll be starting indexing by Google as well as by our site internally. And then by March 26th, giving ourselves 45 days to absolutely perfect that, and then we'll have a good PR launch.
Yeah, then we might talk about it a little more, just kind of, cut a ribbon, fly some balloons, who knows? Put it on Facebook, I don't know.
Add in the paper, check out our new website. It'll obviously be on the existing web page when that date happens. Again, Ruth and I will be working between that soft launch date and the final go live date to continually, or to start to push departments from the old page to their new pages once those departments are comfortable with where their new page is.
Sounds good.
Very good.
Thank you. Thanks for the preview.
Thank you.
Next, we've got memos of interest, and I think there are a bunch of people in the audience from the Healthy Rivers and Stream East Ditch Pipeline Repair agenda item, so maybe we'll hit that one first, if that's okay by the board. And I don't know who's presenting. Are you presenting that, John?
I am not. I think we.
We're here.
Oh, okay.
Hi, how are you folks?
Welcome. If you guys would just introduce yourself for the record.
Okay. I'm Dennis Davidson, assistant to the East Mesa Ditch Company.
I'm Martin Eastland, president and member of the East Mesa Ditch Company.
And then from our staff, do we have anyone?
Yeah, is
from
there
Healthy
anybody-
Rivers and Stream Board? Is
Yeah,
Lisa
there's
here?
supposed to be
in the back.
Days in the back?
Yeah, you want us in the vicinity here from the Healthy Rivers Board, or how do you want to handle it?
Yeah, it's certainly in the vicinity. I mean, I don't know who's going to be responsible of giving an overview of this.
I thought Lisa was, but.
Has Lisa's
Yeah.
name on the agenda.
Yeah.
I'm emailing now to see.
I can do that if you would like for me to.
No, here's John and Lisa here.
Ah. I don't have to hit send.
Yeah.
Hey, Lisa, can you see if that thing is on?
Yeah,
Show up on the
I'll
map.
start that up, yeah.
So Rob, I assume you introduced the issue already? And
Dennis and Marty introduced themselves, but we weren't sure who was going to give a presentation of the overall issue.
well, I can do that, or either one of you guys.
Either way, it doesn't, we can do a PowerPoint or whatever you would like to see. I mean, we can
Well,
just.
let's let the board determine that. If that's
I would like to have staff do the presentation.
okay. The request that came to the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board, and which now has been recommended for approval of funding and forward to the BOCC, is a request from the East Mesa Ditch Company. And the request stems from the failure of that ditch and around what we refer to, well, it's referred to a variety of different things, but across some county property which was subject to the Rhine Exchange, the ditch experienced a failure. The ditch goes through a tunnel and then it traverses a hillside, a slope, both of which are starting to go, if not gone completely in some sections already. And so the East Mesa Ditch is fighting to find funding to get their ditch fully functional and running to supply water to the areas that are serviced by the ditch. Boy, that's really bad.
It's crappy, isn't it?
Is there any way to make that better?
Well, do you want it bigger? What do you?
Well, I can hardly see it because it's bleached. I'll tell you what.
That's a little better.
Can you see it? We have copies individually. Pass those out. At least the board, you can make more sense of it. The ditch diverts on the Crystal River and then flows parallel to the Crystal River itself in a northerly direction. It diverts on county property known as Red Line Point. Goes down the Crystal to the point where the damage is located on the old Rhine Exchange BLM parcel. The ditch then diverts more from the flow of the creek, gets away, or the river gets away from the river and starts to service a variety of different properties before it virtually terminates on the Neeslandic Ranch, John Neeslandic Ranch, to the far north. You can see on this map the various, the nature of the various properties affected by in the vicinity of the ditch. The yellow shaded properties are properties that have been preserved through open space. The red shaded properties are properties that have been preserved through acquisition. And the ditch is in the light blue line, going northerly to the right of the Crystal River itself. The properties that are benefited directly by the ditch include three properties in which the county, or two properties in which the county has conservation easements, the Now's property and then the East Mesa, which is Neeslandic's Ranch. It also benefits the other properties that are shaded, the McIntyre property, which is used to be known as the Blind Dog Ranch, as well as the lower portion of what used to be, originally the ownership goes back and has changed quite a bit, but now it's under control of the Wexner family. So, what the request is for $45,000, which is really rather a modest amount considering the scope of the project and the work that is facing East Mason and putting this ditch back together again. The funding sources are outlined on the budget supplemental request to the BOCC. They include the ditch company reserves, capital reserves itself, the NRCS, the Colorado River Water Conservation District, which is more familiar known as the River District,
The Colorado River Roundtable, there is a request to the Soil Conservation Board. I'm not sure if that's been approved. You guys can
That
fill
has
that
still
in.
not been approved.
Still waiting on that one, as well as a CWCB authorized loan availability. It puts the project at around $550,000 for completion, but I'm not sure if that hasn't inflated somewhat since the original.
That has changed.
Sure.
We did a best case scenario and a worst case scenario, just dealing with our contractors and pipe cost, and the cheapest price we can come up with is $712,000, and the most expensive that we know of is $806,000. You may run into places where there's rocks that they end up having to blast, put the new pipe in. We're not sure what's under there until we get in there and start digging around. So the 550 is now probably 750. We met with the CWBC last week, and we're going to request them to give us another $250,000 or $200,000 to bring it to $750,000 for our loan through them. So that's kind of where we are with the cost of it.
The recommendation for funding was unanimous from the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board for the full amount of the request, which was $44,000. The money is available under the, I believe, Lisa, under the 2014 appropriation. Is that correct? That has been rolled forward and is still available at that level. What else can I say about this request? The the functioning quality of the ditch really is an absolute necessity for the continued viability of the agricultural lands that benefit from the ditch. And without it, I can't see how it would those agricultural lands could be sustained at all. Quite frankly, the expense of it, I suppose, would get so much that the owners of the various agricultural properties might start rethinking what they're doing in the business, perhaps. But the viability of the agricultural enterprises along the ditch certainly is dependent upon the continued functioning of the ditch. And I think it's fair to say that whatever East Mesa can realize in the form of assistance to get this ditch up and running is money that will directly promote the continuation of agriculture in the Crystal River Valley.
George? I got a couple of questions. John, on the map, under the Pickens County Open Space, fee simples,
yes.
Are those properties irrigated?
The property furthest to the north is, but it is irrigated out of the low-lying ditch, which diverts out of the Crystal, as well as I believe as well as the High Line, which comes off Thompson Creek. I'm not sure about the High Line. But that property is irrigated and is actually being worked by Bill Fales under a lease.
But these other properties have water rights off the ditch?
No, the other properties are not irrigable given topography. I mean, they're pretty vertical.
Okay. Just under the total funding, there's a short paragraph, and it said that the motion passed by the board contained a condition that the East Mesa Ditch Company agree to engage with the River Board and consider working with the Pickens County on matters of irrigation efficiencies. So my question is, consider. I mean, what does that mean?
Well, as the board is aware, there's been quite a bit of discussion in the last, actually it goes back quite a number of years really, in the pursuit of increasing efficiency of agricultural irrigation practices in line with the general improvements and efficiencies in the consumptive use for municipal rights. And the idea is if the use can be made more efficient, then more water might be realized for stream flow. But that has never ripened into anything solid, either at the legislative level or otherwise. And so, but the idea is still around to be discussed. And the reason it doesn't have anything more specific than that is because there really isn't anything more specific in existence to physically talk about. And to put any more into it than that would really amount to a request to the property owners on the ditch that they somehow commit to relinquishing their water rights into the future on an unknown basis for an unknown mechanism, and the River Board was not comfortable in going in that direction. But a commitment to a dialogue is definitely not something that is designed to elicit a default if there isn't a discussion, but really a means to invite the continued cooperation of county assistance in the ditch in the future, beyond this request perhaps, and in coordination with the ditch back to the county to let us know what's going on with their operations. And in the future, who knows what might present itself that would benefit not only the properties that are dependent on the ditch, but the stream flows into Crystal as well. So, and in fact, I would have to say that I've already had discussions in this regard, and I think that, you know, I would be optimistic in the future that we have productive discussions between the county and East Mesa Ditch on any number of topics.
All right, thanks. One more question, and this is for David and Bill. When I looked at your scoring chart, which thank you for finally getting that done, it's really helpful for me, and hopefully I'm sure it was helpful for you guys. But my question is, when we look at the goals of the River Board, you know, because you have a mission statement, you've got some goals, and it went from 0, the lowest, to 25. And I just wonder where we're missing the clarity of what the goals should be, that we can have such a broad range.
I'll make 2 comments. The first one is, this scoring sheet is the old scoring mechanism. The new scoring mechanism that we discussed last month goes into effect for formal approval in January, so that hasn't taken effect yet. And the second is that there was quite a robust discussion of this particular request by the board. I would say that while it was unanimous, it just made the cut. In terms of total, and as you'll note, there's one person whose votes did not get registered because it wasn't submitted after the fact. So I don't know what that would have done in terms of changing the scoring, even though there was a unanimous vote to approve. So I can't speak for the individuals who showed the zeros or why, and why there was such diversity. If you see, you know, some of us voted at the high end, and some of us voted at the very low end. So I can't speak for them. All I can say is it did make the cut in total, and if we had applied the new scoring mechanism, which we probably could do, just to see what the differential would be, I think you would see a higher score. And because of the way these questions are worded, I think we were required to follow this format as opposed to the new format that I think gives more clarity both to us as well as to you.
I scored 0 as far as our goals are concerned, because I thought our goal of improving water quantity is directly contrary to assisting someone in removing water from the Crystal River. But my reasoning in voting yes was, they've been doing this 100 years. They're going to improve this ditch whether we're part of it or not. And in terms of public relations, I thought we were serving a broader goal of the county, which is to preserve agricultural lands, and a broader goal of the Healthy Rivers Board in engaging in these discussions and hopefully getting some cooperation for the future. So I rated 0 because it's a direct violation in the short term, but I voted for it because of the larger concerns.
All right, thank you.
You sound like an attorney.
Used to be.
Rachel.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I'm familiar with this application because it has been discussed at great length at the 1177 Basin Roundtable meetings in Glenwood Springs. And that process is that they're always kind of pre-vetted, and then they're scored, the group looks at once, and then at a second follow-up meeting, the group votes. And so it did attain support out of the Basin Roundtable funds, and I think that was an important first step. At that time, I questioned, and I think some others, about is there a way to make this more of a ag efficiency pilot project, but I think that what John has outlined is that we really just don't have the tools yet. There's no water right available to give to the saved water, if that was the case. And you know, these guys have been, I think, up front in maintaining that, you know, we need the water to continue the ag that we've been doing. And should there be other ways in the future to save some water, we'd be open to looking at it, and the health of the river. But I would just say I see for myself a little more of a nexus than perhaps Bill is, and I can understand his logic. But I know that one of the real priorities of both the Colorado River District and our 1177 Roundtable Basin has been the maintaining of historic water rights that are pre-compact, pre-1922. And if for any reason these guys said, hey, we're done, it's staying in the river, we're, you know, essentially either reducing or cutting back our water right, that water would just be available for someone else to claim out of the river. You know, not assisting doesn't keep water in the river. I mean, it may seem that way for a short time, but based on Colorado water law, you know, until some other right holder is injured, you can always have new filings that take a river down to its minimum stream flows. So I would hate to see that, you know, pre-compact water right loss. Those are very valuable to continuing to draw water down our side of the hill and a lot of times. So, and I do fully agree with your broader purpose, Bill, as you kind of described it, because I think, you know, it's about community partnerships that all share within a resource, and this is the, you know, an act of good faith, I would say, from my part, that we try to work together better in the future for a healthy river as well as healthy ag in our community. But that it just, there is, no matter what our fund is and can grow to over time, we're going to need to leverage it by working with others. You know, we have a small lever, as it were, that we can help influence behavior and help to achieve some common goals, but we'll never have the resources to, you know, do a whole big shebang thing. I mean, this water has been well managed for a long time. As others have noted, and you note in your packet, you know, it does assist with return flows in late season, and there's a chance that it can take flood waters off there in the really, you know, super high times and reduce some of those issues. But I'm supportive of it, and I would like to continue a dialogue that I know a lot of the ranchers in that area have been engaging in conversations about the efficiencies. And it's not the primary target or goal of this, but it is a goal that we could perhaps advance together, and I'd like to, you know, just take the time to do that. So I'm very supportive.
Michael.
Yeah, you know, it raises a lot of questions in terms of what goals are, what the necessities are, what our current situation is with water, and you know, I find the agreement to sort of talk about it in the future kind of squishy. I just don't. That just seems so indefinite that it's meaningless, quite frankly. Whereas if you got a loan from someone, you couldn't repay the loan, you'd lose the asset. If this is an asset, indeed an asset, you'd lose it. That's a hard agreement, right? That's fixed. And yet the county is saying, well, we'll have a dialogue in the future, maybe. And your board changes, I'm sure, and so who knows? I mean, this brings up, and I think, you know, you're not alone in terms of an asset that predates 1922. The county has lots of them. So does this set now a precedent for we're going to support pre-1922 irrigation requests? Because, and your problem is similar to everybody else's problem. It's, essentially identical to everybody else's problem. How do you maintain these old ditches that were made by hand, that worked for a while, and now they really need sophisticated support to keep them running? So does that set a precedent now that we're going to support every pre-1922 irrigation, right? To the tune of 45,000 or more in the future? What about those agricultural lands? Are we committed to those supporting private agricultural lands? If this asset, if you had a house and you couldn't repair the roof on your house, what do? I mean, do you come to the county and say, I can't fix the roof on my house, but it's an important house, and I'd like the county. I mean, this is a really difficult problem for me. It raises lots of questions because it's going to set a precedent for going into the future, and it could, these particular projects in the ditches within Pickens County could consume all of your funds, period. Because this doesn't guarantee that there's not another failure right after the pipeline in the future. So I'm just raising these questions because I think they need to be addressed. And I think that we need a stronger agreement than we'll talk about it in the future. That, for me, does not cut it. I mean, John says $45,000 is not a sum. I'd like to have $45,000, and I would consider it more than modest. But I'm sure I would be asked to make some guarantees. What's our guarantee? I think, John, you should go back, work out an arrangement with John that's specific, that's clear, that sets dates, at the very least sets dates. We shall meet every March 1st, and the board of the Healthy Streams shall meet with the board of the East Mesa Ditch, and they shall have a discussion. I mean, it has to be more specific than what you've outlined here. And I think that would help going forward with other ditches and other loans and further loans. I just don't see that this is worked out enough, because it really calls into question what is the role of Pickens County in irrigation and the preservation of ag lands. How far into it are we going to get? And so we've taken a $45,000 step. What's going to come next? I don't know. I'm just raising these questions. But I think they haven't been answered by the Healthy Rivers Board. And I understand your dilemma entirely. But I can't support it on the basis of the agreement to talk about in the future is not specific enough. I mean, at the very least, you can set board meeting times. We shall attend, and we shall be welcome at that board meeting once a year. Something to that effect.
Michael, are you specifically talking about the thing that's been put forth regarding working with Pickens County on irrigation efficiencies and measurements to protect in-stream flows and the free-flowing nature of the Crystal River? That promise needs to be worked out, or what promise needs to be worked out in terms of the talks that you're talking about? I'm just a little unclear as to what you want them to go back and...
Well, I think the Healthy Rivers, I'm talking about the Healthy Rivers.
Yeah, okay.
The motion passed by the board contained the condition that East Mesa Ditch County agree to engage with the River Board and consider working with Pickens County in matters of irrigation efficiencies and measures to protect in-stream flows and the free-flowing nature of the Crystal River.
Yeah.
I think, you have to set meeting times, you have to have a guaranteed meeting, you have to have much more specific than this. And I think, we ask people all the time for very specific arrangements for whatever we engage in. And this is just not specific enough. Because there's no results guaranteed here. In other words, the $45,000 loan is guaranteed. We're going to give it to you. Not a loan, a grant. But the outcomes, there's no outcome here. So why would I support that?
George and then Rachel.
Yeah, I'm tending to agree with Michael. I think this is a great opportunity to be a model for other ditches in Pickens County and other ag lands. So if we want this to be a model that is actually going to be beneficial, not only for the ditch users, but for the streams as well, then here's an opportunity to do it. And I don't know if it has to be very specific. It could be just that we're going to engage in an annual meeting and look at how I'm not sure what the wording is, but there are, I mean, this county is full of ditches that are, as Michael said, that are of need. The Salvation Ditch, I mean, there's a great example, and how much money is needed would need to keep that running efficiently. So I see this as an opportunity. I would support this. I see this as an opportunity to work with the ditch company and the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board, but to set this up as a model that is measurable and we can learn from.
Rachel?
Yeah, you know, a couple of things. For me, I can see where you and Michael are going with this at some level, and I would see stating something that after the ditch improvements are made, you know, it's like upon completion, because before then I'm not sure there's that much, and it'd be nice to, and I'm sure they do through the water division engineer, know how much they're taking out every day now and how much they would be doing in the future. But I don't see this as a conversation where for what is essentially 5% of the project cost, we can say you have to, you know, dedicate 2 CFS to Pickens County, or you have to reduce your annual take by 10 acre-feet and leave it in the river for someone else to take out, because again, there's no protection mechanism right now for water that's left in the stream. The next user right down from the intake can take it all if they have the rights to it. So I don't mind trying to create more formality to beginning a discussion in the future. And I'm only bringing this forward because I know from the presentations at the 1177, they were fairly clear. We're not reducing our ag operations. We're not interested in producing less hay and taking these lands out of production. So there may not be much, quote, water really saved by this efficiency. There'll be less leakage, and there might be a little less draw from the beginning because of less leakage, but and so again, I'm not saying there's not opportunities, or there couldn't be, and we're all looking for new technologies and things like that. But I want to kind of bring it back to when we look at the fund and the way that we are able to use it, it's, for me, you know, not just to all be legal battles with the Front Range and the basin implementation plans and legal battles with the River District. You know, we end up spending a lot more on legal paper issues than we do on the ground. We've done some restoration. We have other stream restoration efforts that go forward. But to me, working with the ag community and ag is as important as working on non-consumptive values and riparian values and the health of the rivers, as is important of fighting to protect the rivers with the legal battles. And so I just see this as one more leg of a chair that upholds the water management in our valley as it is. You know, the water, every single drop is counted twice and used 7 times, you know, from the headwaters down. And so I think that to be involved in ag for what is, again, about 5% of that project total, I don't know what restrictions or strings attached we'd like to put on that money that makes it a difference between we'll walk away, we'll find it somewhere else, thanks guys, never have a conversation with you guys again, versus, you know, yeah, we can help, we can assist, we have some revenues available, and we have common goals, and we just embark on that with some trust in a relationship to fulfilling those common goals. So, I mean, if someone can think of some specific language that they'd like to call a meeting within 90 days of the completion of the improvements, these guys probably have several years worth of continued fundraising before they're really even able to jump in, and fine, but I don't want to turn it down on, you know, I don't know what our ask really is more than the River District was able to, excuse me, the River Board was able to put into their motion.
George?
David, last month when we had our discussion here, you talked specifically about looking at outcomes. And so maybe sort of explain that again, the process when you were scoring and when you're going to give out a grant, there were certain criteria you're going to look at. You're going to come back and make sure that the work was done and you were able to measure the outcomes. I mean, for me, that's what I would like to see in terms of what the Healthy Rivers and Stream Board would be getting back from this grant, so that you're assured that your money is being well spent. And again, it's being used as a model for if another applicant comes down the road before you.
Right, and as I pointed out, this grant request was submitted under the criteria that existed at that time. The new criteria doesn't go into effect until likely February, because we won't have voted on it until next week. That new criteria does require for grants, I believe, over $30,000, that the disbursements can be graduated, that we can require specific measurements be incorporated into the grant request. But this grant request, we had to consider it under the criteria that was in place at the time. One. Two, yes, the future, and I think this addresses Michael's question, I think the future will prevent precedents to the extent that that's possible by requiring some measurability and some specificity in terms of what the expected outcomes are. That said, I think we're operating on this particular request under the advice of John and staff that being able to be very, very specific about what the consequences are of not complying was not within our purview at that point. So I guess I would add that I don't see that there's anything that prevents this board from adding whatever you think is appropriate, and these folks will have to make a decision about whether or not they want to accept it on that basis. I don't see, and I think John mentioned that he's already initiated conversation, that there's any opposition, and I think you've heard that verbally as well, to having a dialogue and putting some sort of regularity to that so that we have progress reports, et cetera, would be acceptable. I think that's up to them to respond to.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would like to see. I would just like to see some sort of measurable outcome that shows that it's, and I'm sure it's going to show that it's been very positive to prevent leakage and have more water that's going to be perhaps not going back into the river, but it's going to be more efficient for the ag operations. So then down the road, if another ditch company comes looking for monies, and I'm sure we would want to make sure that they have a strong partnership with other entities, that again, that there are some measurable results and we know that it's actually working.
I guess I would add too, because it's happening now, is that Healthy Rivers has established a collaboration with Open Space and Trails. When we were considering this, we obviously wanted to understand what was currently conserved and or owned and benefited from. And some county-owned or conserved property does benefit from this ditch. So that was a factor. Certainly was a factor in my voting in terms of taking responsibility for protecting property that's been conserved to the county and or is owned by the county. So there is some beneficial use back to us that might not exist in other situations, as Michael has raised. So I personally, I believe that this is something that we should do. And if we need to put some suggestions forward to the water company to consider, along with John, we can do that. But I don't feel like we're at a point where we can require a specific measurable outcome under the current criteria.
Michael. Yeah, I think, first of all, you have to outline what the struggle that Bill had, which is you're taking water out of the river, so how are you preserving water quality if you're taking, but you're supporting the ag aspect of Boone County. I think you have to outline that in the in the agreement, which is we have two duties here. We have a water quality duty, we have a duty to our riparian systems, and we have a duty to our agricultural systems. And therefore, we are going to engage in a grant to an irrigation company because we feel that it meets and can meet in the future those obligations, both of those obligations. And so that has to be clear in the agreement, it seems to me. And that's one of the outcomes, that you have clarity. The other is that you have at least annual meetings on a scheduled basis. That's an outcome that I'm fine with. Because I'm not suggesting here, I don't have the answers to what the future of 1922 irrigation rights, Picken County and agricultural lands are. I don't know what it is. But I think if you engage in discussions with irrigators and landowners and the best minds that government has to offer, that you can come up with a new solution, a new approach, something that hasn't been done before. Because you have experts all the way around. And unless you have that agreement and that specific an agreement that you will do that, there's no point in going further, quite frankly. So they're soft outcomes, right? They're not the outcomes that Rachel was talking about, which is a measurable amount of water and that, but they're still outcomes, and they provide a template for future action with future irrigation companies. And I think it'd be easy for John to write up that kind of an agreement, and for the Healthy Rivers to meet one more time to talk about what those outcomes should be, and with some specificity, and then go forward, and then be able to say, we did this with the East Mesa company, we will do this with whatever future company comes to us, because we expect that essentially all the 1922 irrigation companies are going to be at our doorstep at some point, because they all have leakage problems, they all have ditch maintenance problems, and they don't have the funds to take care of it. That's I think, that's an easy outcome to see happening in the future. And let's be positive about this. And I think, it is sort of outlined here that we can have a positive engagement, but I need more specificity about it. And I think going into the future, we'll be glad that we made it specific, and not that we will maybe have a conversation about efficiencies and so forth. That isn't good enough right now for me.
Well, we've been discussing this for some time now. It seems like there's a little direction to come back with a little bit more information on clarifying how the interaction is going to happen in the future. Is that what you're proposing?
Well, yeah, and it's based on an outline of what the relationships are between irrigation and agricultural land, why it's important to Picken County, why we're engaging in this, and how we shall engage, which is just, it's not about solutions here, it's about having conversations with the ditch company, positive, specified engagements with the ditch company, not what we have here.
Johnny, any suggestions on moving forward on this, given what you've heard?
It seems to me that it would satisfy the board if there was specificity on the interaction between the county and East Mesa Ditch Company. So I would suggest that a representative of the county, and I would think it would be a staff individual rather than the entire board, meet with a representative of the East Mesa Ditch Company once a year, and then from those discussions determine whether or not the two bodies want to get together and talk about things further, or what's going on with each entity, and there put some more meat on the bone as far as the dialogue goes.
Yeah, and I think you also have to outline why we would do it. You have to say what's important to Picken County.
Well, that's easily said because it's been articulated by by everyone
Right.
numerous
But
times. What's important to us is the preservation of riparian habitat. What's important to us is preservation of productive agricultural lands.
And therefore,
And therefore, we're going to work with entities that represent both.
and we will have representatives, specified representatives, to do that on a basis, on an annual basis.
Is that all, is that?
Steve? Yeah, I mean, that sounds like the direction we're going in, but Steve, you want to weigh in?
Two issues that haven't been really touched upon. One would be if there is a catastrophic blowout of the ditch, it would put a lot of sediment into the river, a one-time event that would make, the water quality in the river would go down for the duration of the time for the river to clear that out. Eventually, it would all be just as clean as it was before. The second issue that really hasn't been touched upon is this would be important for preserving the pre-1922 water right, and in this case it's actually 1894 water right is a large percentage of the water right of the ditch. Well, what are we preserving the water right for if there's ever a compact call on the Colorado River? The most likely outcome is the east slope interests of Denver, Northeast Water District, and so on are going to come with a whole load of money and try to be buying out or renting water from pre-1922 water rights, good senior water rights on the west slope, and having them leave that water in the river. So that could be a potential outcome here is the Denver Water Board comes to the East Mesa Ditch Company and says, we want to rent your water to send it down to Lake Powell to meet the compact obligations. And we have no guarantee that that's not going to happen. That act would put more water in the Crystal River and solve the problem of the hole because nobody else could take it out. It would have to go all the way to Lake Powell or to Lee's Ferry to be measured at that point. So that's another consideration to take into account is would we be willing to accept the possibility in a really super dry year or a period of dry years of having those 750 acres maybe not having any irrigating water on them because they would rather take the money from East Slope interest and let the water go downstream. That solves the problem of the hole in the river.
Yeah.
But then we'd have a whole bunch of, temporarily dried up ag land also.
George?
With all the other grants that you've gotten lined up, are there any stipulations or requests or obligations that you have to meet?
Well, yes, water conservation. I mean, it's not as in-depth of a requirement that you're requiring. The equip dollars is there to help agricultural landowners conserve water, better use their waters. That's the big grant. The river district is pretty much the same way to protect those rights, reduce erosion, reduce salt contaminants, those kinds of things. Going on down. The Colorado Soil Conservation Board, we haven't got that, but it'll be basically the same kind of thing. And the round table and the Colorado River Conservation District basically are going with the same rules and guidelines.
Yeah, but with our grant, we don't really have any of that written down with the Healthy River Board at this point, do we?
The requirement is that the money would be put to the project would be completed. In other words, the ditch would be functioning, and in so doing, by having the pipeline existing over the stretch of the ditch that's been outlined, it will alleviate any blowouts along that reach of the ditch and improve potential water quality. It would conserve soil by having the ditch functioning in a way that delivers water to the actual irrigated land.
And we're a shareholder of the ditch, aren't we, the county?
No,
We're not?
no, we're not.
Even though we've got water rights coming out of it?
We do not.
Oh, I thought you said we did on some of our fee simples.
No, the ditch crosses some of our fee simple property, but it does not benefit that land.
Oh, okay.
The land that we own outright, that the ditch crosses, has not been irrigated, is not currently being irrigated.
Well, I would throw this idea out that I would support the Healthy Rivers and Streams proposal to grant $45,000 to the ditch company and just add some wording, as Michael has been discussing with John Ely, if that's all right with you guys, what we've been talking about, sort of the soft outcomes, and the hopes and the wishes in terms of what we're trying to do.
I can't speak for our whole company. I would have to go back and talk to everybody that's involved. But personally, I don't have a problem with keeping an open dialogue between Healthy Rivers, Pitkin County, whoever, on an annual basis. But that's just myself. I can't speak for the rest of them.
So we essentially will see the attorney write up the additional language as requested by the board, and then see that at a formal meeting to approve the grant, or is this,
You can approve it now, conditioned upon that.
Yeah, in whatever way, but then they would need to take that back to their company to say, this is the final language that Pitkin County gave us, do we want to accept this grant and go forward? That's kind of what I was just trying to outline those steps. So I guess it would make sense to me that we go ahead and see that language come back to us first. Approve it conditionally, you let us see the language before the language goes to your company.
Is there a certain number of years that this happens? Does it happen from now until the end of time? Or does it happen for 20 years, or 10 years, or 5 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. You have a loan there, a $350,000 loan, so it could be the duration of that loan.
30 years.
That's actually a question I had for you, Marty. You'd be taking out a huge loan from, is it the Water Conservation Board loan?
Right.
The revolving loan, and right now, do you do ditch assessments for each of the owners?
Yes.
And would you have to increase those in order to pay off the
On the
loan with
worst case-
CWCB, and are the landowners financially solvent enough to take on a bigger assessment on the ditch?
The ranchers that are truly ranchers are going to have a hard time taking on another $25 a share to do this project. Now, there's your gentleman ranchers, but we do have a few of those guys that it doesn't really matter what happens, they have the money to support it. But there's probably 4 ranches under this ditch that are actual cattle ranches. That's the way we make our living. And it puts a strain on you if you got to pay another $10,000 a year to get your water for the next 30 years.
But that's actually a question that we all have. I mean, so the nature of irrigation companies and their relationship to the land is changing, and it has changed drastically. But I think that the county needs to be in that discussion in an amicable way. So there's other alternatives to development, primarily. And so that's why this is a beginning point for that discussion, and a beginning point for creating a new paradigm here. And we need to do that.
Okay, we are over schedule on this. Do we have some direction in terms of giving John the go-ahead or approval contingent on some language that gets approved to us?
Yeah, I think Rachel outlined it fairly well.
Okay.
I was a little confused. Is the action of approval complete now, and the language comes back to the board, or or is this being put on hold, or?
I saw it as the action is complete now, but we would like to finalize the language that surrounds the issues that Michael has brought up. And then once we're all comfortable with that language, it can go to you to be able to take to your company and talk to your partners in this as to if that's acceptable.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's what. All right.
Okay.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
It's.
Is this an action item?
This is not an action item. It's just something we wanted to be sure the board was aware of. And as John is making his way up here, we've been going through our learning curve with our vendor ProVelocity, and as we've been building our services and understanding the organization's needs, and we saw an opportunity to actually expand the role of our vendor, which would allow us to eliminate one position, a public safety position, and restructure some of the other organizational support items. Overall, it's a budget savings over 5 years of $171,000 by eliminating that position, relying on ProVelocity for some of the customer support functions more. It involves increasing their contract. It's all within the budget that was approved. It's less, actually, than the budget that was approved as the 2015 budget. But because we had some discussion about the organizational structure and what have you, we wanted to be sure that you understood some of the changes that we're proposing to make there. So it's not so much a decision item unless the board wants us to step back for some reason. At this point, we think this is the most efficient and effective way to organize. And John, I may not have left you a whole lot to talk about on your way up.
Rachel and then Michael.
I was just going to ask, what did the public safety or the PS admin position do that ProVelocity will be doing now?
The PC and desktop support function. So we have two people, two public safety administrators, and with the change, we'll have one public safety administrator who's responsible for E911, and the police record systems, the Spillman system. One person can handle that. But before, two people couldn't handle those tasks and all the desktop support issues. We struck a deal with ProVelocity. I got a good bargain rate to add on the rest of the sheriff's office to full support by ProVelocity. This makes the sheriff very happy. We're doing it for a much reduced price. It's a classic case of the rare event of win-win. The sheriff wins, the board wins, and the finance department wins $171,000.
And so if someone on their desktop computer has a virus or thinks they have a virus, they will now contact ProVelocity, and they will allow them remotely to take control of the computer and go in and do the fixing and then done.
Right.
As opposed to, in the past, we'd take our laptop over to the city hall and they would fix it there.
You're correct as far as you went. The other thing is ProVelocity, with the contract amendment we just executed to cover the rest of the sheriff's office, they committed to having one person here full-time guaranteed and a high probability of having two people here at one time. So our service levels are actually going to go up. Eventually, things will be under control to the extent that ProVelocity can back off that one additional person, and we can be completely supported by one person. But that'll take some time to do. But in the meanwhile, ProVelocity has been very good about getting resources here when needed. So we struck a good deal with them, and they're a good vendor.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Michael.
So what we're talking about is, somebody in public safety doesn't have to be hired because we have somebody at ProVelocity.
That's correct.
We have a vacancy in public safety, and we are proposing to eliminate that position and contract with ProVelocity We get the economies of scale because ProVelocity is providing that same kind of desktop support to a number of organizations. We found them to be very good and very responsive, and so we are able to replace that function internally.
So the public safety went off and got, so are they being reintegrated into
Yes.
our system now?
Yes. We're going to be one organization again in that regard.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're happy with that also?
So far.
So far?
I haven't had the sheriff in my office yet, but no, they have been, ProVelocity has been extremely good, and I don't think the issue was ever getting out from the county system. It was trying to get the level of support that they are looking for, and they're getting that.
Okay.
And we think it'll make, as we build our organization on the business process and application support side, we're actually able to make that a little bit more robust with this structure than what we had originally proposed. So, and we saved some money doing it. So we just wanted the board to be aware, you know, because we'd had such a robust discussion about it during the budget, and we didn't want to make those changes and have you unawares of it.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steinbridge, Lindsay.
Steinbridge budget supplemental request is for the replacement of the abutments and the repair of the trail connection between the bridge itself and the Rio Grande Trail. This was an action item in the Roaring Fork Gorge Management Plan. The bridge abutments have been identified for repair and replacement for a few years now, and in addition to that, the bridge is pretty low at high water. At rafting season at high water, everyone has to literally lay in their boat to get under the bridge. So our goal is to raise the bridge up by 3 feet and then actually take a 15-foot span off of either end of the existing bridge, so we're not working within the riparian edge anymore, and replace the abutments underneath the existing span, so there'll be 2 piers. We originally, based on a 2009 estimated the cost to be about $300,000, which is what we had put in the budget. That number was for construction. It did not include engineering. We've spent $53,000 on engineering and have an estimate back for construction at that $300,000 price, and so we'd like to add the $53,000 back into the budget, if that makes sense. I think that's about it. The goal is to do it in the fall of 2015 right now.
Steve.
Lindsay, by raising the bridge up and basically extending the bridge out 15 feet on either side, will that make for a smooth transition from the 2 trail segments? Because right now coming down from the Rio Grande Trail is really a rough segment, and it's a bit of a climb getting up to the existing bridge already.
Yeah, I mean, it will help us on the Rio side. We're not gonna, and we'll have a more gradual trail in there. Just due to the topography, we're not gonna have it meet ADA grade or anything like that, but by raising the bridge 3 feet, it gives us some play, and we can fill over and kind of smooth out some of the boulders right now that kind of impede the bikeability, as well as pushing a stroller, things like that from the bridge to the Rio. On the other side, we have the space to kind of feather it out and smooth it out so that it's a seamless transition. It'll grade out further. There'll be a little more of a climb than maybe there currently is to the existing bridge, but it should be negligible.
Is some of it an actual, like a physical extension of the bridge, but then is some of it actually doing cut and fill kind of a thing with material there on site too?
Right now, so the 15-foot bridge, right now the abutments fill into the riparian edge. So we can take some of that material out and reuse it on site. We may need to import a little material on the Rio Grande Trail side. And then, the goal is those spans then will eliminate the need to fill in the riparian area and just land exactly up on the riverbank. I'm not sure if that answered your question or not.
Okay. Yeah, I think it would have been helpful, and maybe eventually we can see
graphic.
the SGM's drawings of what the proposed, what their proposed solution is.
Okay, yeah, we should have attached that. It's probably on, I can double check, but it's probably on our project's website. But I can get that to you if you want to see it.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Nod of heads.
Mhm.
Great, thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Future agendas.
Yeah, just a few items for you. We're ramping into the new year. Couple changes. We're going to, on January 27th, have a briefing with the board to talk about the environmental assessment process for the east side of the airport. We had originally had that scheduled, I believe, for February 24th. We want to move that up. And then add in on February 10th another item, because one of the things we'll be talking to you about on the 27th is we'd like to, for the environmental assessment process, set up a input committee similar to what we did with the design guidelines, to help be a representative of the community voices and such as we take public input and such. And if we're going to keep on our timelines, we'll need to appoint those folks in early February. So you'll see those come up on future agendas. And then we seem to have never-ending challenges with scheduling our retreat. We had missed some dates that one of the board members could not make, with the 4th and the 5th. I'm starting to understand why we did this on April Fool's Day last year. But I would like to propose, I believe we're out to March now. I believe March 9th and 10th are now the only 2 days I'm seeing work for all the board members. And so wanted to see if those are still open, if we could move the retreat. That is a Monday and a Tuesday.
That sounds good with me. We don't have a Wednesday that week.
I don't have my calendar with me. I left it at home today, so I'd have to check and get back to you.
Okay. Michael, does that work for you?
Seems okay.
Okay. Yeah, we'll be out to April or June pretty soon, but we'll keep working on it. And that's really all I have that's probably timely on future agendas right now.
Future agendas, anybody?
Just to note that on February 3rd, I will be gone. Tuesday, February 3rd, I'm going to be on a raft in the Grand Canyon right then. And I am scheduled to be back before the next Tuesday's meeting. It is an off chance I might not make it back because I'm getting off at Phantom Canyon. I have to hike out and then drive back here on the day before that February 10th meeting. So I'm going to make every effort to be here, but there's an off chance I would be late or, not be here on the February 10th meeting.
Okay. I will be out of the area for the NACO conference the last week of February. So I will not be at the Tuesday, the 24th work session or the Wednesday, 25th.
You do realize that because of the retreat, that February 3rd was not in this packet?
Yes, and so we'll
I'm
look
assuming you'll
towards that.
schedule a work session that day. The meeting that he's not going to be here for doesn't have a meeting at this point.
Well, it actually is in it's out of place. It's like the 4th sheet.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, February 3rd is just out.
Oh, yeah, it's a Wednesday and Thursday, actually, February. Yeah.
It goes February 3rd, and then it goes back to January 6th. And then
We must have
January
gotten
13th, sorry.
double-sided printed page in the wrong way there. I must
Got
have
it.
hit the button to print it. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's not, we had the board membership reports on here, Rob.
Yeah,
I
unless
don't
there's
know if
something
that's really
pressing that somebody
necessary
needs
today.
to express from the board, we'll skip that part of the agenda. there's probably not a lot of activity during the Christmas time period.
Okay.
Open discussion.
Yeah, so we have a few items to discuss. First, Rob, you had requested that staff put together a letter in support of the Thompson Divide Withdrawn Protection Act that's being reintroduced by Senator Bennett. I think some of you have had an opportunity to see that draft. Do you have enough copies here? I must have. Oh, there is enough. Sorry, Rachel.
Yeah.
This is the latest draft of that letter. Again, it's a position that we've taken in the past in support of this legislation. Since it's being reintroduced, we felt it might be appropriate to send another letter. So, give you an opportunity to review that and give feedback.
I think that sounds good, and I think it's good to get one of these out early. And just asking process-wise, because obviously this isn't on the letterhead yet, we would have it on the letterhead for next week, Tuesday in the morning?
Well, right now, one of the things I was going to suggest is we could just authorize the chair to sign it and get it on letterhead and get it out. I'm not sure it's necessary to have everyone sign it. If you guys approve of that, we can make that adjustment.
That's okay with me. You know, we'll be sending him more letters in the future.
I suspect you'll have more opportunities, yeah.
I know that was Rob's specific request for real positive action for him to take on at his last meeting here. So I think if he could have his signature on it, that would be significant for Rob.
And I recognize this is the motion of the board, and this has been a big process that kind of started to come real strong when I first got on the board, and we've put a lot of energy to it, so I'm real proud to be part of a statement that says that this has been an important part of what we believe in, and it will continue to be an important part of what we believe in. So.
Okay, well, we will make that adjustment for Rob's signature, and we will get that out. And then I have one more item, then I'm going to turn it over to you, Steve, but I just wanted to let the board know we obviously have had a lot of challenges with weather and airspace at our airport, particularly December 27th. We had a perfect storm. The FAA has actually confirmed that that was the single busiest day in terms of aircraft operations in the airport's history. And so we had very, very limited airspace. A lot of it was because of the poor weather and low visibility ceilings on either side, and the folks wanting to get in or get out. Just to follow up, we are working with the FAA. The FAA actually controls the airspace, and so the FAA's process right now is really to make the airspace as efficient as possible and to get operations in and out of the airport on a first-come, first-served basis. You may recall a couple years ago we did have a slot system or a reservation system that the FAA was helping us run. And one of the things that we found is that pilots were at times reserving multiple slots, and we weren't getting an efficient use. We weren't getting as many operations in and out during peak periods as the airspace would allow, and so the FAA wanted to move away from that process. We are obviously, given the volume of traffic and the concerns, particularly around the commercial flights that had to divert and such, we're re-engaging in discussions to see what solutions might be available working with the FAA. But we did have good completions in terms of the number of flights getting in during some of those busy days. There were a few because of weather where we just did not have the flights coming in. We had previously worked with the airlines on a ground transportation plan, both from Denver and Grand Junction, to make sure we had buses teed up in case there were cancellations, and we did have some success moving passengers, particularly for the flights that were diverted to Grand Junction, but also the flights that were diverted to Denver, and we're going to continue to try and improve on that program. So we'll keep the board updated. It has been a challenging season with the facility limitations and airspace limitations, and we got to find better ways to work with our partners on this.
George?
Yeah, two comments. One is I really want to acknowledge the airlines. I thought they did a tremendous job this year, much better than in past years in terms of meeting our guests if they're being diverted, getting information out ahead of time for delays. I know my daughter was diverted coming in, and she never even got off the tarmac. The bus was right there. They deplaned, got on a bus from Junction, and headed right over. So I really want to acknowledge and applaud the airlines for stepping up, because it could have been a lot uglier. And I don't want to trivialize and minimize sort of the impacts that we had for that 1 week. Of course, we had weather, and then we had that one clear day out of 10 days that everybody wanted to get out. And so that created that log jam. But over that entire period of time, no one's really talked about the problem in terms of getting in and out of Aspen, where the cars were backed up at the airport. It took 45 minutes to an hour to get into town. It took that long to get out of town. This is an ongoing issue that I think is frankly a much larger issue than a short period of time that we had to deal with the airport and weather. And I would encourage the city to revisit as one of their top goals in terms of how to better move traffic in and out of town, because it can't be a pleasant experience for our guests. I know it's not a pleasant experience for those of us who have to drive in and out of town for business.
Yeah. Sounds like a good topic for one of our future quarterly meetings with the city.
Senator Steve?
A couple of observations on that. One, I got a report from one of the people working at the public information desk there. I don't know who actually runs that, but they said all of the employees working there at the airport on that Saturday were just so helpful and so courteous and so patient with all of the passengers who were, having a pretty miserable experience in many cases. And she said that the staff was just really awesome on working on, trying to solve the problems and make it as smooth as possible for people. Another issue that I observed personally, I try not to drive into town, but I happened to be driving into town, and I don't know if it was that Saturday or another day, but it's one of those times all the ski traffic was heading into town and out of town, and all the employees were headed out of town. So the traffic was backed up starting at the airport all the way into town. And as I pulled in approaching the ramp coming from the airport onto Highway 82 headed into town, there were 4 semi-truck loads of rental cars merging into the traffic heading into town during the worst possible time of the day for rush hour traffic. And I ended up behind all of them, and these are really long semis. They're longer than even, I think, an ordinary 18-wheeler. So each one of them is taking up space of quite a few cars on the road. And every one of them drove into the roundabout, around the roundabout, and then headed out of town in the rush hour traffic going out of town. So they were helping slow it down both directions. And I mentioned this to John Kinney already, and he was going to check into it, but it was maybe just a coincidence that you had all these rental cars that needed to be moved, and it happened right during the, the peak rush hour traffic going both directions.
Yeah, well, I agree with the traffic problems, but I have to say, I can look back to when I was delivering brochures 15 years ago, and you'd have the same type of backup, and you would just count on not coming into town, or if you had to go back out to the warehouse to pick something up at 3:30, you knew you just lost an hour and a half. And so, with all the growth we've had in the valley, and the growth even here with permanent residents, it's hard to imagine what that traffic would be like without RAFTA and the BRT being fully in place. But there's a point at which that system will only be able to do so much, and I think having a new conversation about that, it makes a lot of sense right now. It's really challenging to see a new Canary Initiative report, greenhouse gases and climate change discussion, and then, sitting in front of us is one of the single least efficient roadway systems for that last mile, and the resulting idling cars that are there. It just can't be ignored forever. That's that.
Discussion?
We have something. This is Rob's last meeting as county commissioner, and your last meeting as chairman of the Board of County Commissioners, and it's really a steep learning curve for anybody becoming county commissioner. So Rob, I know that you would have spent the first couple of years of your time on the board just learning the ropes and finding out what you can do and what you can't do, and starting to have an impact. And you've had a tremendous impact on the board during these last 2 years. So we all wanted to present with you this plaque. It says, Pitkin County presented to Rob Ittner with gratitude for your years of service as a Pitkin County Commissioner. And so wanted to give these out. And also a parting gift, and it's from Hayes Silver and Goldsmiths, Aspen, Colorado.
Very sweet.
And so I've spoken to you privately about this, but I've really enjoyed being on the board with you, and you always presented really good viewpoints on things, and you were always very involved, and your efforts were very much appreciated by all of us.
Well, thank you very much, Steve.
Absolutely.
Like I've said before, it's been a pleasure serving on this board. I didn't know what to expect when I got into it. Kind of got into it on a whim. I'm just a business guy in Aspen that wants to be involved, and it's been an honor to serve with all of you. It really has.
We've all felt the same way, Rob.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Sorry, I'm right in the way. I'm right in the way here.
Thanks, yeah. Great. Hugs for everybody. Thank you. Well, with that, we've got a little executive session business, I guess. So I'll take a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of acquisitions and River District issues, CRS 24-640. 4024A and CRS
246402-4B.
Yeah, Rob, if I could, I'd like to add an additional item, and that's the litigation between the St. Jude's and the Roaring Fork Club, and that would be pursuant to CRS 4244024B as well.
So added.
Oh, so moved.
Second?
For discussion, I want to know, are we going to cut the cake before?
Well, grassroots is closing out, I think we can do that.
We'll cut the cake, yeah, there we go. Okay,
We have a first, do we have a second?
George, second.
Oh, we can do that if you want.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sweet.